It's time for TWiT This Week in Tech. We've got a great panel for you. Jason Hiner's back. He's editor-in-chief of ZDNet. Owen Thomas from the San Francisco Business Times. And somebody brand new, but I know you know him from Gamertag Radio. Parris Lilly joins us. He's in security, so he'll talk a little bit about CrowdStrike. We now know what happened, and it's pretty terrible. The AI-designed vegan cheese that you're probably not going to be able to buy in stores anytime soon. And OpenAI decides to compete directly with Google by announcing its SearchGPT. All that and more coming up next on TWiT.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Tech, episode 990, recorded Sunday, July 28th, 2024. Dogecoin Fort Knox. It's time for TWiT This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news. And as always, we've assembled a very fun panel. Owen Thomas is back. He's a managing editor of the San Francisco Business Times. He is there in the asbestos-lined offices of the San Francisco Business Times. Hi, Owen.
Hey, Leo. Thanks for having me back.
You're not worried about that ceiling stuff? It's okay?
Exposed ceiling means that it's completely transparent. You can see what you're exposed to.
You can see where your mesothelioma is coming from.
I feel safer, yeah.
I love it. Great to have you back. Also, Jason Hiner is here, editor-in-chief of ZDNet. That's wow, you've really risen to the top. The top. I love it.
I love it.
We were talking off camera earlier with Alex Lindsay and I, and he was saying the best studio background is a corner. And you knew that. You've got it. Look at that. It's beautiful with the old Mac and everything. Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
Is there a door behind you or a window? That's a door.
That is a door back there.
And instead of believe over the door, you have imagine, which is kind of the same thing, really.
Yeah. Perspective, just a perspective. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be here.
Always nice to have you, Jason. And somebody who's never been on this show before, I don't know why, Parris Lilly from Gamertag Radio. Parris, so nice to see you in your corner.
Yes. First off, let me just say it is an absolute honor to be here. You have been such an inspiration for me, not only in my career, but obviously things that I do. People know me, things I've done in gaming, but I mean, TWiT has just been a part of my life and look, I'm not trying to date either one of us, but TWiT has been a part of my life for a very long time. And this is quite an honor. So thank you for having me.
I am honored to have you. His day job is info security, so he is actually, we should have had you on last week.
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow. Did you get bit by CrowdStrike?
I did not, thankfully. And I actually had a meeting with CrowdStrike about 8 months ago about switching to them. And something told me, no, let's just stay with what we have. And sure enough, here we are.
Although, CrowdStrike is very well known in the business. Steve Gibson was talking about all of the times we've mentioned them as people have discovered new 0 days, and that's because of that Falcon sensor network that is on so many machines, monitoring any kind of activity out of the ordinary. Unfortunately, it was running in Ring 0, and now CrowdStrike has kind of, I give them credit for being honest, admitted what happened. And it doesn't reflect well on them at all.
It does not.
I'm sorry to say. So, as you probably know, we talked about it last week. Microsoft says it was only, 8.5 million computers were affected by this, running Windows with CrowdStrike on it. CrowdStrike pushed out an update to its Falcon sensors that put the machines into a boot loop, a recovery blue screen. And the only fix, at least initially, was to go from machine to machine, boot it into safe mode, and remove the Sensor 291 files, and then boot up, and you're fine. We speculated a lot last week on Security Now and on this show about why it happened. CrowdStrike explained. So we had an employee I mean, at this point is probably an ex-employee who put out an update using a template that was new and the tests for it hadn't been fully developed. My instinct is that they had stubs. They had placeholders in the test that said passed. It's passed. Until we get to this, it's passed. And unfortunately, after running it through the tests, it passed, even though it was clearly not functioning, and got pushed out to all of the computers running CrowdStrike, and that brought so many down. Delta Airlines was down for, almost a week. Jason, did you cover that at all?
Yeah, we did.
It's out your way.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's one of those unfortunate things that shows us how vulnerable we are. I think it's a good reminder, and it's a good reminder that the tech world, the tech revolution, the digital revolution touches everything in so many places more and more. And when something goes wrong, like it goes bad. I mean, we've seen this with AWS with a number of their outages that have then cascaded and taken down multiple other services. And so, I think the pressure is even higher, and also the level, the expectations for the level of thoughtfulness and systematic approval of all kinds of, whether it's updates or changes or software development of other kinds. We just need to hold it to a higher bar, right? And all of the companies that are involved, we need to hold to a higher bar. Because I think you also look at the flip side of this, like think about the dangers of what this presents for, companies with a nefarious purpose. This is one where it was more like hubris and lack of good systems led to sort of a bad outcome. But you think about, what does that mean for all of the things that are out there that are potentially vulnerable, that somebody could sneak in and put some bad code in there and take down the airlines or the power companies or the power grid or things like that. I think that's the larger worry when you start to think about things like this.
There was blame to go around. I mean, certainly when Delta went down for more than almost any other company, they clearly didn't have good processes for getting everything back up and running. Perhaps not backups. I was told, I don't know if this is accurate, that one of the problems was that they lost all this prior scheduling data for pilots, so they couldn't make new schedules because they didn't know what the previous schedules had been. That's on them, right? Windows gets some blame for allowing security content to run in ring 0 where it can crash the computer. Microsoft says, hey, don't blame us, blame the EU, because back in 2006, the EU said, hey, you've got to give parity to other security software. If your Defender runs in ring 0, you got to let them run in ring 0. I think most sensible commentators have pointed out that was a long time ago. And maybe you could have figured out something. Paul Thurrott on Windows Weekly said there's also APIs that companies like CrowdStrike could use instead of software running in ring 0. There are APIs that are safer to use. CrowdStrike gets probably the brunt of the blame. Their templates are kind of like virus definitions. They're not the sensors themselves, but they're rapid release because there's an emergency or it's really important to get put out fast. That's one of the reasons it went out so quickly. We got to get these out. And it's also one of the reasons so many companies applied it immediately without their own testing. It's a rapid response, right, to something that's going on. CrowdStrike says 2 additional template instances were deployed due to a bug in the content validator, the testing harness. One of the 2 template instances passed validation despite containing, in their words, problematic content data. Should that ever happen, Parris?
No, it should not happen. And you even pointed out, just from the standpoint of Delta as well, all this really comes down to CrowdStrike, Windows, Delta, other companies that had extended downtime. It's your policies and practices that are failing. internally in your company. This is something that you have to constantly go through as far as QA goes, development cycles go, making sure that you're doing proof of concepts before you ever put anything into production because of exactly something like this. All it takes is one mistake and you can literally take down your entire environment. I actually have a story from maybe about 15 years ago where I took down an entire county network because of a mistake. Yeah. But
that's why,
lessons learned from
it's important to ask a security professional because they may be perhaps a little less likely to cast blame because it happens, right? Mistakes happen.
It does happen. Yeah, mistakes do happen, but something on this scale, you already said it yourself. That person who was probably ultimately responsible for this is probably not working at CrowdStrike anymore.
And maybe the people who wrote the test harnesses who put in stubs or whatever they did so that it would pass, even though it didn't, they might deserve a little bit of blame too, right? I mean, you don't deploy tests that don't work, and then people deploy something based on those tests. That's your heap of trouble.
But this is also why you have compliance. You have to have testing levels. You have to have QA. You have to make sure that every check and balance and control is being tested at every level because, again, all it takes is one link in the chain to break and, you can have a disaster in your hands.
Should we give CrowdStrike the benefit of the doubt?
No. No, because like I told you offline and we said at the beginning of the show, my company, we almost went with CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
So if that happened, we're losing production time. We're losing revenue because of this mistake, which would not have been our fault because we were trusting CrowdStrike to provide us proper endpoint security on our servers and our workstations. And now you bricked some of our critical systems. We're losing money on that. So who's liable for that? So again, that comes down to lawyers and contracts and SLAs and where you have all that, defined. But ultimately, CrowdStrike does have to be responsible for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And ultimately, this was probably on somebody's list at CrowdStrike. Oh, yeah, that's that thing we need to clean up. Like when we get to it, we've got to get that cleaned up. And then it hit the fan and they're like, oh, shoot. So I'm sure there's a bunch of IT people right now that had things on their list. And they're like, all right, we're working overtime this week. We've got things we've got to clean up. We know that we have we're vulnerable there. Let's prioritize those things. Because there's always, you can never, it's like in any business, you can never get everything done on your task list. You can never, have everything perfect. But, it's a game of priorities. You have to prioritize the things that put you at the most risk. And for CrowdStrike, as Parris said, they're in the business of trust. They're helping protect you. And if what's helping you protect you, failed, it's just really tough to go back and have that same level of trust. And so I think for them, that's going to be a challenge. To be fair, there's a lot of companies that swear by them, that feel like that they have been super helpful to them and that they are very much needed in many infrastructures around the world. And so, I think some people that will give them another chance, that they'll, whatever their policies is, I'm sure, or their policies are and their processes, I'm sure they're going to all of their clients, right now and telling them, look, we've got this under control and here's our processes in place to make sure this never happens again. And we're going to learn from it and get better. And so, but whether, companies buy that or they have to, as part of their own CYA and making their processes better, if that means they have to cut CrowdStrike and go in a different direction, only future will tell.
Chocolate Milk Mini Sip says in our Discord, I find it frustrating no one ever talks about the obviously bad code in the driver that crashed the PC because it didn't check its inputs. It shouldn't be crashing on bad inputs. It should be saying, oh, well, I don't know why you just sent me to an address that doesn't exist. And it should halt itself. So let's spread a little more blame around to the person who wrote the bad code in the driver. Should government be involved in this? I'm reading from an article at Yahoo Finance by Daniel Howley, who's their technology editor. He says we don't have a body that can generate the best practices needed for private industry to protect against delivery of damaging updates and what a customer should do, how banks, hospitals, and airlines should protect themselves. The CISA, Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, doesn't, in fact, have an enforcement mechanism. Should there be one?
I lean towards no, in the sense that you don't want government to get their hands too involved into private business when it comes to things like this. But I do think there needs to be some form of guidelines from a compliance standard, whether it's the government that's overseeing this or there's an agreed upon, third party that's doing governance for this. We need that to be just industry wide as a standard for things just like this. Like something else that comes to mind for me from my company, Kaseya, a few years back when there was the ransomware attack on them. That affected us directly because Kaseya was a vendor that we trusted, was a tool that we used, and we had to shut down for like over a week of using that tool, which is critical to access to some of our systems. So again, this is where I'm saying you're losing revenue because you're trusting a third party vendor because you're using their tool, for your day-to-day production. So I would like to see some type of overall compliance. I mean, sure, there's SOC 2, there's ISO that's out there. We use that in our company, but you don't have to necessarily use it. If a company chooses to not go by that guideline of, you don't need to be SOC 2 certified, we'll still use you. Where's the check and balance other than some legal agreement that you have between the two companies to oversee that?
It feels like the government does have a role here. I agree with you because obviously the EU government demand that Microsoft give parity to other security companies at Ring Zero is a problematic decision that whether you agree with Microsoft or not, that this is the part of the underlying cause. Clearly, no government should be weighing in at that level, but we're all interdependent on the internet now and all these companies. And I don't know who is going to enforce it if it's not government. I mean, is it an industry association? Is it a standards body like ISO? It seems like you need to have some teeth in this.
Yeah, I do agree on that.
Leo, the other problem with government involvement is there's a large set of people online who already believe that CrowdStrike in particular is a tool of the deep state. And
God, look, you can't
kid you not.
You can't beat those people, though, right? I mean, that's going to happen.
Well, including one of the candidates for president, President Trump, on his infamous perfect call with Ukrainian President Zelensky, brought up CrowdStrike in connection with the DNC servers. It was a whole scandal. CrowdStrike had to, publish a blog post about, setting the record straight about our work with the DNC. It was just part of that.
I didn't remember that. Wow. Deep cut on that one. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that kind of just bolsters Parris's point about like it's very dangerous to get government too involved, especially in this information environment where people are going to say, oh well, was the government somehow tilting the scale and hacking this company or that company through its crazy influence?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we live in a crazy world.
Yeah, but you can't defend against crazy. I mean, there's always going to be somebody even crazier. How you defend against, you can't make government policy based on the fact that somebody might come up with a conspiracy theory. Or can you? I don't know.
Well, I mean,
maybe you have
look
to.
At 2017 through 2021.
Yeah. Well, as long as we go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's sort of like the practical aspect, and then there's like the ideal aspect. I think the ideal aspect is if you think about banks, if you think about healthcare, highly regulated industries, they're highly regulated because there's a lot of public damage that could be done if they aren't, right? And so should the internet be a highly regulated industry? Should the tech industry be a highly regulated industry? Up until now, it's been a very lightly regulated industry, partly because the lawmakers don't understand it very well, partly because there is some fear that if we get in there and put too many restrictions in place, it's going to slow it down and put us behind. Like we are in a race globally with other nations, other areas, other regions. And so there's some fear about, being too heavy-handed. And so I think that the ideal is somewhere in the middle. And I think several people have already mentioned that there's the possibility that you could put or roll out some standards, guidelines, best practices, right? Like CISA does often already, and that the government could do more of, and that could sort of set the expectations of what if you are running a business that a lot of other businesses that are critical, like airlines and banks and hospitals, then you need to have a level of fault tolerance. You need to have a level of systems verification. All of these things that will make sure that things like this don't happen. I think that's the most likely and maybe the most practical solution in the sort of short to medium term.
All right, this is for our crazy listeners. I've got some evidence that there is some weird conspiracy going on. Somebody emailed me that said you should examine what was going on with short selling on CrowdStrike in the days before this event. And actually, if you look at the CrowdStrike stock, it did plummet precipitously, but the plummet began on the 15th, and the actual event was on the 19th. It had already lost half its value then. So there's two thoughts here. Maybe there was some inkling that there was a problem afoot. They had, by the way, done something similar to Linux a couple of months earlier, so it might be people were starting to worry about their processes. I don't know, but I think also if you're talking about punishment or regulation, is the free market sufficient regulation? I mean, CrowdStrike's going to have a very difficult time going forward, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I don't know. As long as we're talking about Trump, we'll get this out of the way right now. He headlined the biggest Bitcoin conference of the year yesterday in Nashville. Now, I got to point out, in 2021, he was not a big fan, when he was president, of Bitcoin. He said, it just seems like a scam. I don't like it because it's another currency competing against the dollar. He said tokens aren't money, their value is based on thin air, and warned that unregulated crypto assets could facilitate the drug trade, among other illegal activity. I'll tell you one illegal activity it absolutely facilitates is ransomware. You got bit by the Revil ransomware in the Kaseya incident. What was the payment? It was in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
right?
it was Bitcoin.
Yeah. That's been pretty clear that the entire ransomware economy is based on cryptocurrency. Well, he's changed his tune when now, as often happens with candidates for the president, and especially for this candidate, it's a transaction. He wants the vote of, and the money of, by the way, the Bitcoin billionaires, including Andreessen Horowitz. So he went to the Bitcoin conference and said, and I want you to tell me if this is true. For too long, our government has violated the cardinal rule that every Bitcoiner knows by heart: never sell your Bitcoin. Is that true? Never sell your. Is that?
I believe he did say that. Yes,
he said it. Oh, I know he said it. The question is it true? Now I have to say I can't sell my Bitcoin because I forgot my password. But if I could, I probably would at this point. He also said he wants. So he says, A, we're not going to let the government ever sell any Bitcoin. It's going to keep all the Bitcoin it has, and they're going to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Interesting. He has diamond hands now.
Diamond hands.
So do you want to get super nerdy about why the government has Bitcoin?
Of course.
Yeah, why does first of all, why?
Well, mostly from seizing it from criminals.
Yeah.
And then, interestingly enough, there's a whole business of figuring out how to hold the government's Bitcoin. It's a business called crypto custody, and that's complicated. It is, I believe, the U.S. Marshal Service that has most of the crypto that's been seized, and they work with various custody companies. One that comes to mind is, I believe, Anchorage.
Do they? They convert it to dollars as quickly as they can, don't they?
Well, no. The problem is, and this is interesting too, is often that's tied up in legal disputes. So
they can't. They have to
kind of
hold it
sit
in
on
escrow.
it.
Yeah.
Right, and then and then if there is like a eventually a legal settlement, a disgorgement process or distribution process that happens, I believe that they do sell at that point because they can only distribute cash normally in those scenarios. I think and there have also been disputes. These are more often in some of the bankruptcy cases that have come up over like if you're owed Bitcoin, or or Ether or any other cryptocurrency, should you, as part of a settlement, get coin for coin what you held, or should you get the dollar value at the time of the failure? But
that's a
the
good
value
question.
might have changed a lot. And if there's a difference, who's kind of on the hook for that difference?
RFK spoke on Friday to the same conference and said we should have a Bitcoin Fort Knox. And he says the government should have a reserve of 4 million Bitcoin, and we should buy 550 a day until it reaches 4 million. Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming has announced a bill to amass a federal reserve of 1 million Bitcoin, which she says will be held for a minimum of 20 years. It could be used for one purpose, reduce our debt. It seems like all three of these people think that number always goes up, right? I mean, it makes sense if you know the Bitcoin's going to be worth $1 million a coin in 20 years. So, well, yeah, we should buy more.
Well, because Bitcoin, and this is not universally true for cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin by design is deflationary. There is a limited set that will be issued. So if you believe that demand for it will go up, then the supply is limited, supply demand, ergo.
Okay, but Owen,
and that's,
I'm glad you brought that up. I've been thinking about this. Yes, it's designed to make it harder and harder to mine Bitcoin, and there will be a limit on the total number of coins. But you can also split Bitcoin almost infinitely, right? So in a way, it is still inflationary.
No, you can't. You can't split it. I mean, yes, you can buy fractions, which
fractional.
Are known as
Satoshi.
Yeah, but that's not splitting it.
Well, but I understand. But it's if Bitcoin becomes worth $1 million a coin, then you've got Satoshis. It seems like it doesn't change anything.
That's not at all like the
You can't print more bills like you can with the dollar.
Right. Yeah. Right. The U.S. Treasury, just printing dollars, and that's part of the original attraction. A lot of early Bitcoiners really believed in that deflationary model. I mean, they're not that different from gold bugs in that regard. There you can mine gold from the ground. An issue with a lot of the more fly-by-night cryptocurrencies that have emerged are the fact that there's like a mechanism for issuing more coins and hence inflating.
So you're saying we shouldn't have a Dogecoin Fort Knox? That would be a mistake.
Probably a worse idea than a Bitcoin Fort Knox.
Okay.
But I'm not saying that that's a good idea either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe it makes sense then to have the government hold 4 million coins.
Well, El Salvador has tried it.
How did that work out? That became their currency.
Not great. I mean, the problem is that their economy is so weak and so small, and the president was spending so much on Bitcoin purchases that he was running into possibly violating terms of their international loan agreements. So probably not the strategy that we should pursue if we were to go down this road. But generally the U.S. government has not gone the sovereign wealth fund route. We have not historically held like securities. There was, I think, the limited exception in the financial crisis where we held some warrants in the car companies, and I think everyone believed that was really awkward. I think that the government holding Bitcoin is kind of putting its thumb on the scale of
because if there's a limited number of coins that can ever be minted, and the government has 4 million, they will always have a set fraction of the total, right?
Right, and there's not really a governance risk there, but it's because of the way Bitcoin works. But I
wonder if we should replace
Bitcoin versus Ether.
Should we replace the dollar with Bitcoin, and then the Federal Reserve can't print more money?
Well, there has been talk about a digital dollar, which is which is different. That's there's stable coins which are fixed, tied to the value of the dollar, right? Right, and this is a different thing altogether. It's a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, and the Federal Reserve is actually studying it. Now, this would be not replacing the dollar. It would be taking the dollar and essentially tokenizing it so that you could trade it much like a cryptocurrency. It would kind of eliminate the need for stable coins, really. But and it could potentially reduce some of the costs of payments infrastructure. A lot of this is still theoretical. They've been studying it for years, but not wild, not completely wild and crazy idea. And a lot of other governments around the world are looking at, a digital currency. China has explored a digital yuan, and the EU, of course, has formed a committee to study it.
I mean, keep in mind that there's a lot of scammy stuff in the cryptocurrency ecosystem, right? We all know that, and we don't need to name any names, and we know the history. I think the audience,
Bankman-Fried, is that who you're talking
exactly.
about? Yeah.
The audience here knows the history of the very scammy nature of a lot of
stable coins have turned out not to be so stable. Actually.
Not to be very stable, exactly. That said, the underlying technology and idea of blockchain and potentially, the potential for digital currencies is still quite solid. There are some really solid ideas there that have proven over time to be somewhat durable. The biggest one is Bitcoin itself, right? Bitcoin has these massive swings up and down based on enthusiasm because it's not based on anything.
It's not tied to anything.
It's not tied to anything except the value that people put in it. At the same time, that's also essentially what the dollar is now. The dollar is not tied to a gold standard any longer. It's really essentially tied into the confidence that people have in the United States government to be around and to be stable. And so
it's both Bitcoin and dollars are fiat currency, but with the dollar, the fiat is the faith is in the U.S. government.
That's right.
What is the faith with Bitcoin? Just that speculators will continue to
the algorithm, the algorithm.
Okay.
The technical underpinnings, and as Owen said, it has a limited number of coins, and so it is anti-inflationary in that sense that it will, you can't just keep printing more indefinitely, and so the long-term path that has been set for it is that eventually it will be worth somewhere between 1 million to 4 million a coin or something. If you believe that could be 50 years or who knows.
Well, and I should point out that's what the Winklevoss twins thought, and then they have become crypto billionaires. They've done very well on Bitcoin. If you
bought it in 2013,
it's hard not to.
You're doing amazing.
Yeah. But does that mean if you bought it in 2024, that in 10 years you would be doing as well?
Probably not as good as the people who bought it in 2013,
right.
But
the best time. It's the old Chinese proverb: the best time to buy Bitcoin is 10 years ago. The next best time is today. No, that's not the Chinese proverb. That's about tree planting. I do have to say, Bitcoin is now worth $68,000. It has been a very good year for Bitcoin. It started 1 year ago, this time last year, at $30,000, less than half.
It takes these swings, right? It goes up, it goes down, but it tends to always make higher lows, which is what you want, right?
I gotta get the password. I got 8 Bitcoin sitting in a wallet that I cannot touch.
You have 8? Oh my gosh, Leo.
It could be my retirement fund if I could just remember the password.
That's funny. Hold them for 10 years, as you just said,
So it's widely believed that the Biden administration is kind of anti-Bitcoin. Although they have started to make rules. We now have Bitcoin ETFs, right? I can buy Bitcoin, whatever that is, an ETF at my stockbroker today. I'm not sure I would recommend it. Maybe I should. I feel like when you buy a stock, you kind of are investing in the company, just as like the dollar is an investment in America. But when you buy Bitcoin, what is it tied to? Is it the math?
Well, a stock is a bet on the future earnings of a company, right? So
right.
It is a speculative vehicle. from that perspective, like,
but at least it's tied to something you can research.
Right. Yeah. I mean, essentially, but a lot of the value of a stock, at least in terms of like the day-to-day swings, is the psychology of the market.
Sure.
And what not just what investors think about it, but what investors think about what other investors think. Right. Momentum and all these other phenomena of the stock market. So all of those things are present in Bitcoin. Like, a lot of the speculation is not based on like the inherent value of Bitcoin, but what people think other people are thinking about Bitcoin.
If you buy Bitcoin, you're really buying the belief in blockchain and the technology, and that this sort of bet that a currency or even financial system that's based on rules and math rather than people and their sort of ups and downs, right? And so, do you believe in that? It's tough. I wouldn't necessarily encourage people to run out there and do that, but I do think it's worth reading about blockchain and the theories behind what cryptocurrency is based on, because there's some interesting ideas there. Right, because remember, it came out of the mortgage crisis in 08, 09, where people were like, well, what the heck? The system that we thought we trusted was based on the whims of a few essentially financial oligarchs that were, this is almost like going back to our CrowdStrike example. We had some misplaced trust. And so what can we trust? And so that's when they came out like, well, what if we had a system that was based on algorithm and math rather than putting our trust in institutions that are run by flawed people? And so I think it's an interesting idea. Like I said, I'm not necessarily endorsing it. I wouldn't encourage people to put their 401k in a Bitcoin ETF. Do not do that. I would not recommend that at all. Just do the S&P 500 index fund or something. You're going to be much better off. But I think that there are interesting ideas in there that have some implications for the future that are worth sort of learning if you care about tech and the future.
I shouldn't do this. I should go to a break, but I'm going to say, but what does that mean about NFTs then? For some reason, they're inextricably linked in my head. I
think NFTs are like, they're a great idea for digital tickets, for like, like
using blockchain to verify the provenance of something makes sense.
Yes.
Especially if it's an ephemeral thing like a ticket. Maybe less sense if it's the Mona Lisa, but for a ticket, it makes sense.
Yeah, as like a vehicle for like, like artistic, like a vehicle for speculation on like digital art. I think that ship has sailed. I think people are just tired of that idea.
Right. Yeah. It's only related because it's blockchain underneath the hood. That's all. Right.
Yeah, I mean, certainly crypto enthusiasm lifts NFT enthusiasm, and NFT skepticism feeds crypto skepticism.
Right. Okay, we really should take a break. But I'm glad we had this conversation. Jason, you're actually more bullish on it than most of the people I talk to. So you've convinced me. No, you've convinced
me. Interesting.
Okay. I'd kind of written it off like NFTs as kind of a fad of the early 2020s and not worth paying any attention to.
Before you go on a break, because I obviously stayed very silent during this entire conversation about Bitcoin, I will say that I'm still on the skeptic side of it, and I have been for a while. And it just really comes down to everything in this conversation. It's about having faith and taking a leap of faith as far as the investment goes in the future of what Bitcoin is going to be. And obviously you're bringing NFTs into this as well. I'm just too skeptical of a person that I don't trust it enough to want to invest. So I stay away.
I almost asked you, Parris, how much Bitcoin you have.
0.
I honestly, if I had not forgotten the password of the wallet, I would have 0 as well. But because I can't access it, I've got diamond hands. I can't. I can't sell it.
You mined those too, right? Didn't you? Actually mined those.
Oh, this is the sad story. No, Steve Gibson mined in the very early days 50 Bitcoin, back in the days when you could set up a PC running a miner, and the next morning he woke up and there's 50 of them, but they weren't worth virtually nothing, and he erased the drive that contained the wallet. It's gone. Now that poor guy, that's $3 million plus, and if you say it's going to go to $1 million each, that's $50 million. That's oh
boy.
We try not to mention that to Steve. And Steve, if you're listening, I apologize. The 7.85 Bitcoin I have were all donations, because at one point, we had a tip jar, and I thought I was real hip back in 2013. I thought, you know what, we'll take Bitcoin, and we did, and people gave us one. I think the biggest donation was like 1 Bitcoin, which at the time was $20 or something. Right. But I could see, it's all there in the ledger. I could see all the donations. Most of them were fractional. And I'm very grateful to you all. You paid I have my retirement fund, if I could just crack it somehow. My son, everybody, my son says, no, I found a guy. So I say, well, there's a
very high percentage. I bet Owen probably knows the number, maybe of like something like 25 to 30% of all the coins are lost. Yeah.
Including
that sounds in the right scale.
Satoshi Nakamoto's original Bitcoin, which have just sitting in that
whoever
wallet.
He is,
whoever they are, it's just sitting in that wallet. If it ever moves, then
it'll crush or make the market.
Yeah. That's the other thing. You don't know, right? There's some whales out there who could really change things.
So Bitcoin whales is a real thing, where there's a small number of people that own a lot of coins that move the market and potentially manipulate the market. And so at some point, if this truly becomes a thing that, it is a global becomes a part of the global financial system, there will be closer regulation and scrutiny over all of that.
We don't know who the whales are. We just don't know.
That's right.
And they may be malicious. They may want to crash the market. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. Enough of that. Let's move on. I love this panel. Jason Hiner is here. He, I first met you when you founded the Tech Republic. You are now the boss of it all, editor-in-chief at ZDNet. Is that an onerous job? Is that a tough job?
EIC is a burnout job. Like there's no doubt about it. But I'll be honest, like I love it. I love the work that I do. I love the team that I have.
How big is the team?
To ZDNet. Yeah, so we have not large, or I think of it as not large. We have 17 staff and about 35 freelancers.
Oh, yeah, right.
So
that's
about
not huge.
50.
Yeah. When I worked for ZDNet, it was thousands, or ZD rather, it was thousands, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
But that was many magazines and a whole lot of stuff.
That's right. That included all the magazines and labs and all kinds of things, right? And so, but I love what I do. I have a great team. In 2022, we had this awesome opportunity to recreate ourselves, reimagine ourselves for the future. What can ZDNet do for technology enthusiasts for the next 10 years and business readers, because a lot of our readers are professionals. And then so we recreated the mission, we relaunched the brand and the site, and then at the same time we recreated the team. So you rarely get the opportunity to do those three things at the same time, and we did, and so it's been it's been terrific. We still have a lot to learn, and but it's really focused on two things today, which is how is tech changing, your life, your work, and, your friends, family, and community? And then what are the products that can help you sort of get a taste of that, right? What's coming next, and how can it, best impact
you still
your
have
life?
Some really great people like Adrian Kingsley Hughes there, and Ed Bott, and such great legendary names. And I see Ant Pruitt is still a contributor there.
Dan Patterson.
Dan is, Don Reisinger. So many great people that we've known over the years. So I am rooting for ZDNet big time. We're going through a reinvention too. Media, one of the weird things about new media is it's constantly changing. And we're trying to figure out what podcasting is going to be in the next few years. We're reinventing ourselves as well. So
it's exciting, right?
Yeah,
like if you look at it as like,
yeah,
it's fun. It's an opportunity. It's to reimagine yourself and be useful to people. And obviously you do a lot of things that are very useful to
that's
a
our
lot
goal.
of people.
Absolutely.
Leo.
Yep. And as long as you keep your eyes on that what you're up to is to help people understand technology and your tagline is great. Tomorrow belongs to those who embrace it today. As long as you keep that in front of you, I don't think you can go wrong. I think that's the mission.
Yeah.
You keep true to that mission. It's so great to have Parris Lilly here. First time, not last time. You play games live on TV. That's exciting. Gamertag Radio.
Yeah, I mean, Gamertag Radio is an audio podcast, or it started as an audio podcast back in 2005. Ironically enough, Leo, if you may or may not remember this, my co-host Danny Pena, you and him went into the Podcast Hall of Fame together.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
And he's the one that got me into this. I started in 2006. And again, just doing it as fun. I like playing video games. I like talking about it, doing that for a while with Danny, going to the E3s, doing all those things. And ironically enough, it was 2020, right when the pandemic happened. I was thinking, I'm going to be done. I think I've had a good run with this. I'll, just continue with my day job. Right. But then because of the pandemic and everybody was at home, it opened up so many more opportunities for me. So to this day now, I part-time do things with Kind of Funny Games. You're talking about the live streaming and studio stuff. I've hosted things for Xbox. I've done things with Ubisoft, EA, PlayStation. I've done some work with IGN as well, because now I'm able to be home because I live in Southern California, but I can still have that impact. I can still have a voice, and I can still be out there literally to the globe, talking about video games and participating.
Yeah, because Gamertag started pretty much the same time TWiT did. I mean, we both started in early 2005, and it's so good to see the continued success. What's your game these days? Is there any one that you play all the time?
This weekend, ironically enough, speaking of Xbox, because Xbox just added Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 to Game Pass. So I was like, you know what? I don't really play Call of Duty a lot. Let me give it a shot. I've been addicted. That's like the past 3 days. That's all I've been playing.
Awesome.
But yeah, but beyond that, I mean, pretty versatile because I'm fortunate enough I get to preview games, review games. I have a big preview that's going to come out here in a couple days that I can't say exactly just yet what it is, but it's been awesome. Like I've even done stuff with Microsoft as far as their flight sim game goes. I've been able to host a few events for that as well. It's been a blast, and I've been very lucky and fortunate that sure, I'm in IT, which again, I have to give you credit again, taking it all the way back to the screensaver days. Watching you, listening to you, and watching you talk about tech is what got me into IT. And then I've just progressed over the years to where I am today. But, I've been lucky enough to have my day job, being able to maintain that, and then being able to do this gaming stuff on the side. It's been a lot of fun.
That sounds pretty good. That sounds like a good deal. Yeah. I tried Modern Warfare, and I go in there as I could do a single player campaign, but when you go in they're so good. It's like instant death. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, I'm not good, by the way. But it's just fun to play.
Oh, and
even
they
though I'm not
teabag you, and they're just mean as hell. And it's too tough. It's Paul Thurrott said that. I said I'd like to play Call of Duty. He said, "Don't. It's too hairy for you. You can't handle it." He was right. Owen Thomas, he lives in the worst city, the worst run city in the world, and he's proud of it. Yeah.
Yes.
No.
By gosh, it's, if anyone's going to criticize San Francisco, it should be San Franciscans. That's a deeply held belief.
Yeah. And I love San Francisco. It's one of my favorite cities, lived there for years, and I still love it. There's some problems, but every city goes through its ups and downs. Now, you sent in a clip of you on the show not so long ago.
I have it queued up to a spot.
This is 4 years ago. Watch this. This is Owen Thomas 4 years ago. Look at him. You think you're very cute, Owen, but how much weight have you lost?
About 64 pounds.
Holy moly, dude.
Congrats.
Now show him now. Show him the real Owen Thomas. Let's see him. Look at him. You look great, Owen.
Chiseled.
Oh my God! Look at the guns. What's your secret?
Actually, I was just texting with a friend about this, and he was asking me how I stay consistent. My advice is make fitness the default.
Oh, I like it.
And so you just don't think about it. Like, just
I like it.
Do it. It's not like
it's not just exercise though, right?
Yeah.
You got to diet too, right?
Yeah, I have definitely kept my diet a lot tighter than
no more French fries.
The pandemic years were not good. Were not kind to
I don't blame you for gaining weight during the pandemic. I mean, we all did.
But it was also kind of convenient, right? Like or the path of least resistance.
Sure. Pizza tonight, pizza tomorrow night, pizza the next night.
Yeah, but I've actually found that intense exercise and a lot of it is what works for me.
Oh, I got to do that. All right, I like that.
Not sure it's the prescription for everyone, but I log things religiously, and I found that if I go to the gym a certain number of times a week, I lose weight, and if I fall below that level of activity, my weight doesn't change or goes up.
What's your fitness device? You wear an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or nothing? He's not wearing a watch. How do you track it? You just write it down. You write it down like a savage, with a pencil.
Actually, I've got an app that I swear by. It's called Gym Goal. And that's about it. And MyFitnessPal for calorie logging. Yeah. And I've used those tools for like 15 plus years.
Nice.
And a lot of others have come and gone. At one point I had 3 fitness trackers strapped to my wrist to test them out at the same time. My conclusion was none of them
doesn't help.
Do anything for you.
Gave useful data.
There's no substitute for actually taking a heavy weight and moving it up and down. You got to do it.
Yep.
They are getting smarter though, by the way, like the newer breed, especially led by like the rings, where they give you more, use AI to give you actual insights. Like it's not just data.
I like heart rate variability and things like that, and readiness and so forth. Have you tried the Samsung Ring yet? The new one? I guess no one has yet. You have it.
There it is.
It's on his finger. What do you think?
It's to the point that you all have been talking about. The actual usable data is better, and you mentioned it, like readiness. What they call it is your energy score.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Like with that, it told me this relates to what Owen was saying. There was one day where like it was kind of lower, and I tapped, was like, what's going on? Why is it lower? And they give you the things. Most of them are related to sleep. But there was one which is like your exercise the previous day. And it's like my exercise the previous day, my normal is like 30 to 40. And it was like 6 minutes the previous day. And so because I was like, oh, okay, I guess I need to do some cardio today. And it was true, actually. It was pretty accurate. Like I was a little sluggish that day. And so I thought, well, that's interesting that it says my energy level is low. So I tapped it. But the interesting thing is like this never gives me anything.
Nothing
Apple Watch
useful.
has never given me anything close to those kind of insights.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
I had an Aura ring I wore for a long time, especially in COVID, because I thought, well, it'll be able to monitor temperature change, and that should give me early warning if I get sick. But I stopped wearing it because it was uncomfortable in the long run. Interesting. The Samsung ring is not cheap. It's $500. $400.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But still, the Aura, like, the one that looks like this, the black sort of matte black one is $450. It starts at it doesn't have a subscription.
Yeah, I like that.
It's in the range.
Aura started making you pay monthly, and that that bugs me. That's another reason I stopped wearing it. All right.
It only works on Android, and it especially the best stuff is if you have a Samsung phone. Yeah. If you want something similar that does something similar, I think the Ultra Human Ring is the one. That one's $350, and it works on iOS and Android, and it's essentially the same across Android. So that's one. I haven't tried it yet. We're sort of going to test that one after the Samsung. But the Samsung, I will give some credit that they do some good things. And I think this Ultra Human one is interesting because it already does a lot of what the Samsung does. So we'll see when we test it. But it's a company out of India that is really serious about some of this stuff and has been doing it for a couple of years and is a bit of a like undercurrent, one of the favorites of the people out there that are into rings. Yeah.
I'm going to have to check it out. I wasn't even aware of it. And there's been rumors that Apple's working on something like that. Although Apple has, and they seem to be doing some work on this, because they've got something in your ears, most people's ears most of the time, with the AirPods, they have an opportunity there to do some stuff that's kind of interesting.
Sure. To do temperature and that. Yeah. The interesting thing with the ring is, this thing has some gesture control. So it has you put it on the index finger, partly because it can do better readings there. Partly because it's more comfortable. If you have it between two fingers, it's less comfortable. But if you have it where it's only one other finger is touching it, then it's a little less noticeable because these rings are bigger than most rings that people wear, right?
Yeah.
But it does have some gesture support, which I think has to be related to the VR headset that's coming out. Samsung and Google and Qualcomm are working on together on this VR headset. So right now it's like it'll let you take a picture from the phone or dismiss an alarm, right, with a sort of a pinch gesture, the same gesture you use on Apple Vision Pro. But with a ring, by having a ring connected with it, you have more precision. And so we've seen this with the Sony XR headset, which is really enterprise only, but was at CES, and I tested that out, and it was interesting because it does give you a little bit more precision by having something there versus using cameras to sort of watch you pinch. So anyway, that's a little, extra bonus if it comes to pass. And I do think that ultimately you'll see Google and Apple and probably Samsung and Meta eventually do a ring too, because it's really a pretty simple device. It has 3 sensors in it, and then to be able to connect it with other wearables is
makes sense.
Where some value is. Yeah.
Well, it's great to have all three of you on this panel. We will get back to the bad news in just a bit. That was a little brief good news break. Our show today brought to you by Cisco Motific. Cisco, I didn't know this. They have an incubation engine called Outage that merges innovation with the art of the possible. They call it their launch pad for transformative emerging tech. Outage blends startup agility with corporate strength, of course, the strength of Cisco, to develop next-gen technologies from the ground up. They're working in AI, in quantum technologies, cloud native, and more. The newest AI innovation from Outage is Motific, and it addresses a specific critical challenge in the rapidly advancing world of generative AI, bridging the gap between concept and deployment. Motific is a model and vendor agnostic solution. It supports the entire Gen AI journey from assessment and experimentation to production. Motific accelerates deployment from months to days while safeguarding against Gen AI security, trust, compliance, and cost risks, all while empowering business functions and IT teams to rapidly configure end-user assistance powered by organizational data. And isn't that what you want to use AI for? Let's take all that information we know about our business and create assistance that can help our end users, that can help us do a better job. Motific can do it for you. They provide advanced, customizable policy controls to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data, to help ensure compliance throughout the entire process. With deep visibility into operational and business metrics, Motific lets you track ROI, optimize costs, and make informed decisions. It's the kind of business information you need. Your competitors are probably working on it too. You got to get this. And by offering a centralized view, Motific deters shadow AI usage. It empowers teams to innovate responsibly. Your team members are eyeballing this other stuff. You get in there and get Motific now. Move beyond the constraints of traditional AI implementations. Utilize AI deployment that is as responsible as it's revolutionary. Ensure your projects are not just quickly launched, but built on a foundation of trust and efficiency. You want to know more? I know you do. Visit motific.ai, M-O-T-I-F-I-C, motific.ai. We thank Motific so much for supporting This Week in Tech. Speaking of AI, Owen, you had I have to mention this, an article about AI designed cheese. Explain to me.
He has stepped away for a second.
Oh, darn it. I picked a bad time to talk to Owen. He's wandered off. Well, we'll talk about AI cheese in a moment.
Cheese. Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Looking forward to that.
I remember
Cool.
not Stacy, who sent me that? Oh, Amy Webb, who's going to be on in a few weeks. Amy Webb sent me AI designed whiskey. It was awful. It was awful. It tasted like burnt rubber. It was the worst. So don't let your AI design whiskey or cheese. What is it? What?
AI vegan cheese is what it looks like.
Oh, now you're vegan, right, Jason? So you might be interested in this. Owen, explain. What is it?
So there's a company here in San Francisco called Climax Foods, and they purport to use AI to analyze ingredients. They're actually in Berkeley, just across the bay. But they purport to use AI to analyze ingredients to come up with new food products. In this case, they came up with a vegan blue cheese that is, like good and funky with those blue veins.
It looks good.
Yeah, it has gotten placement in about a dozen restaurants from San Francisco to LA to New York. And it's available in 2 markets. Actually, one, I think, not too far from you in Marin County, and also online from online grocer called Good Eggs. Not widely distributed. It is widely talked about, though, because they entered a food awards competition, the Good Food Awards, and were ultimately disqualified because of an ingredient they used. And there's a lot of controversy over this ingredient. It's basically a seed-derived butter, kind of like a nut butter. But the long and short of it is there was so much of a kerfuffle over their disqualification that they landed on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and like 2 minutes on
that's better than any
TV.
Advertising. Yeah,
incredible publicity, but it doesn't seem to have really boosted their business.
Let me read from a little bit from your article. Sarah Bloomberg wrote this for the San Francisco Business Times. Stephen Colbert plucked up a toothpick that had been prepped with a triangular block of blue cheese and examined the moldy swirls before popping it into his mouth. 9 seconds later, he said, "I like it. You can really taste the foot." Did that sell? By the way, this startup has $27 million in funding. Because I bet you, Jason Hiner, you're just dying for a good blue cheese.
Well, they lost me at blue cheese. Like if it was mozzarella it's funny. I've only eaten blue cheese one time. When I first got married, and my wife, bless her, she made this dish. She was really excited about it. I'd never had blue cheese before. And we tried it and it was so difficult to eat. I didn't realize I didn't like it. But that was the first and last time I ever had blue cheese because I had such a bad reaction to it. My gut had such a bad reaction to it.
Yeah.
But
is there good vegan cheese out there?
There is. There's actually one that's in Northern California called Miyoko's, which is now like national and is really good. They do vegan cheeses. It's handcrafted. They also do like whipped butter and other things that are plant-based and is terrific. There's some others as well. I think like the ones that are made out of like cashew cheese and that kind of thing like makes a good sort of ricotta substitute. So there are much better ones than there were like 10 years ago. I've been a vegan for almost 15 years and it's gotten a lot better the last like 5 to 7 years, especially with sort of the dairy replacements.
It feels like that you should just eat fruits, nuts, and vegetables and not be eating simulated animal products, though. I mean,
It's true.
Well,
I don't eat a lot of the simulated stuff. I'll be
I guess
honest.
when you're first transitioning, maybe you have a craving for a hamburger and then, okay. But it seems like the whole point is to not eat animals, even fake ones. I mean,
but and this is not a criticism of Jason or anyone else who identifies as vegan, but there has been a movement in the food world to, instead of emphasizing like what you're not eating, emphasizing eating more of, say, plant-based, more of the good stuff.
I like that.
Really good stuff.
So one term that's very popular here in San Francisco these days is plant forward. There is a plant forward food hall, actually on Market Street, called Salu Hall. It's inside an IKEA. And I actually had a plant-based burger there. It was pretty good. I mean, but you put enough cheese and grilled onions and sauce on anything, and
anything's do all right. Yeah,
Best,
pretty good.
Cool.
Best vegetarian food. It wasn't vegan, but it was vegetarian food I ever have had. It's one of the best restaurants I've ever been to. Is in San Francisco. Greens. It's still there. It's vegetarian and it's amazing. So I'm not against it by any means.
Sure.
What rule did they break? They had seed butter?
Yes, and it's called kokum butter, and apparently this is not a material that's been deemed GRAS or generally recognized as safe. So if you have a GRAS GRAS product,
so it's unsafe.
Well,
it's like putting turpentine in it or something.
It's not unsafe, but it hasn't been proven safe, right? That's where
who does the GRAS? Who does the GRAS certification?
Well, that's the tricky thing. Is basically
it's not the government.
If you have an ingredient that's been
FDA.
If you have an ingredient that's kind of been in circulation for a long time but has never been like formally blessed, you sort of self-certify and hope the FDA doesn't crack down on you. But that is not good enough for a lot of people. They say if you have something, if you have a non-GRAS ingredient, if you're a grocery store and a food startup comes to you and says, "Hey, we've got this great vegan cheese, but it's got a non-GRAS ingredient," a lot of people are going to say, "Come back to us when you have a better formulation."
But apparently, the way the FDA does it is you can send them a notification that it's generally recognized as safe, and they can say, "Okay."
Yeah, and the question is not so much like government regulation, but kind of market regulation.
Yeah.
Like vegans, as you can imagine, are pretty particular about what they put in their bodies. So this is not the right market segment if you're going to
do not put turpentine into my fake cheese.
Oh, trust this cheese because AI picked the ingredients for you. I don't think that's a winning marketing, slogan for a lot of people. Now, they may come up with some novel combinations, but I think, that probably the safer route is like, rather than say, oh, we're going to use AI to sort through like thousands and thousands of just like completely wacky ingredients you've never heard of. Maybe use AI to combine existing, completely safe, trusted ingredients, and start from there.
I have learned so much on this episode. This is
crypto custody, vegan,
very
AI
valuable,
cheese.
really good stuff.
We've got it all.
Amazing. Well, the article,
the U.S. Marshals holding custody of Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
I'm still reeling from that one.
Wow. You can read the article on the Berkeley alt cheese startup that went on Colbert, but then lost it all because they weren't GRAS in the San Francisco Business Journal. This guy, the Business Times, this guy is the managing editor of the San Francisco Business Times. But it is at bizjournal.com, so it's very confusing.
bizjournals.com/San Francisco.
Yes, because San Francisco has to be just a little bit different. We get in Petaluma pretty much weekly a notification that AT&T's 911 service is not working. Please call the main line of the police department if you have an emergency. I guess it's not just Petaluma. In February, AT&T is now admitting a wireless outage blocked more than 92 million calls. 92 million calls. It was a 12-hour outage. Among those 92 million, 25,000 were attempts to reach 911. Now, why are we finding out about this? Because the FCC has been investigating it for the 5 months in between. They have referred the matter to its Enforcement Bureau for potential violation of SCC rules. AT&T just can't catch a break these days.
And by the way, AT&T also wants to shut down its copper line network in San Francisco. It's the landline network. So,
yeah, the CPUC returned them down the last I saw.
Yes, and San Mateo County, other municipalities are fighting them on on the issue.
They are. What at stake is something called the carrier of last resort. You're not allowed to cut your copper if you are the last person who still offers copper for emergency reasons. That makes sense. AT&T has asked the state of California to be relieved of their COLR obligations, so that in other words, they wouldn't be required to offer landline phone service. They say everybody uses cell phones. Now, let's be honest. Does anybody here have a landline?
No.
Does it count if I have a VoIP line?
No, that's not a landline because there's no copper. That's through the internet, right? I suppose some older people do. For years on the radio show, I would tell people always have a landline because even if the power is out and the internet's out, it will continue to work because back in the day, AT&T and the other phone companies are required to keep that powered from their central office. I don't know if that's still true. The CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, turned them down.
Is ISDN still out there? Remember that for bonded pair? ISDN? Sorry. Blast from the past.
So I have some experience with that because I started in 2004 when I started the radio show. That's how we did it, ISDN line. Yeah. First put it in my house, then we put it into the cottage. We put it into the brick house studio, and I think we had ISDN here for a while. But eventually, Clear Channel, which syndicated the show, it's part of the iHeartMedia, said, we can't get the phone companies to give us ISDN. They don't want to run those switches anymore. That's a separate switch. So
for each line, right? Yeah. You have this dedicated line, like nobody else is on your line, which is
awesome. The price went up and up and up, and they tried to force you out of it. And finally, what's interesting is technology's improved to the point where you can now use really the internet for radio broadcasts, and almost all radio broadcasts no longer use ISDN. They just use the internet, the public internet, using a specially designed device for that purpose. It works fine.
So
nice.
So the U.S. phased out ISDN in 2022, but you can still get it in the U.K. for one more year.
Wow. It's kind of the end of the line. That was my first high-speed internet. I went from a 56K dial-up, and I got an ISDN line, which was 264 kilobit lines.
Always on.
Always on. The phone companies originally invented it because they wanted to compete with the cable companies and offered TV over the phone line. This did not take off, needless to say.
Yeah.
But they had this digital technology, so then they said, well, maybe you could use it for the internet. I don't know. So for a while, we were the fastest kids in town with our 128 kilobit bonded. So I thought it was pretty nice. I mean, I felt pretty good about it. Yeah.
Same.
Wasn't it?
Same.
Leo, up in your neck of the woods, there's an ISP called Sonic.
We love Sonic. We have Sonic right now.
Oh, yeah. And Sonic is, I believe, also concerned about AT&T's plan to abandon the copper network because they actually offer DSL still.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they're in the process of rolling out fiber, but as you can imagine, fiber is a slow process. It's block by block. And they still have customers who depend on that DSL, and they would essentially disconnect them. I believe AT&T's proposal would be, just go on 5G for your
wow.
broadband.
That is probably not a good solution for a lot of people.
No.
Yeah. Sonic is we're a customer. I'm friends with Dane Jasper, the guy who founded it. They've been putting fiber in all over the area. They're a really good ISP. But Dane, to his credit, really fights the fight for consumers. And that's one of the fights, I guess, We have a 10 gigabit symmetric sonic fiber here. I'm going to miss that.
Whoa.
I am going to.
Wow.
I'm going to miss you, John, but I think I'm more than that even. I'm going to miss the 10 gigabit symmetric. There is no fiber
Do you have Sonic
in my
at your
house.
house too?
No,
there's no fiber
I have to
at
go
your house.
Comcast is the fastest thing in my house. I'm stuck with.
I'm so sorry.
I know.
I'm so sorry.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. This is the problem in this country. It's basically a duopoly everywhere.
Yeah.
It's either your phone company or your cable company. And
in my neighborhood, AT&T built fiber for the first 2/3 of the neighborhood, but I live in the back third.
I'm so sorry.
Which is where they didn't want it. They have a certain deal. They had to connect a certain number of households, and they're like, yeah, it gets harder when we get back there. There's more yards we have to dig up.
Yeah.
So they didn't. So there's been symmetrical 1 gig fiber in my neighborhood since 2017. It hasn't, but I've still been stuck with Spectrum.
So close, and yet so far.
I can smell it. Like it's
can you
close,
smell the fiber? Oh.
I can smell the fiber from my yard, but can't get it.
That is so frustrating. Dane told me that their whole strategy is you have to have a certain population density. You can assume that a certain percentage of the people who are capable of being on the fiber will buy it, and it's a fairly low number, something like 1 in 5 or 2 in 5. If they subscribe, then it pays for laying the fiber because they have to. This is the other issue: is that the phone companies will, in many areas, not let them use the poles. And that's pole access is a big deal. And he says we often have to trench. We can't go up in the poles. We often have to trench because the phone company doesn't like us. I wonder why. They offer gigabit fiber for $60 a month.
Wow.
And so there's
awesome.
You can't nobody can compete with them. All right, here's one for you, Parris Lilly. Secure boot is completely broken. Dan Gooden writing in Ars Technica. This seemed like a good idea back in the day, and it started because people were putting rootkits on Windows machines. Windows machines using BIOS to boot. The threat of BIOS-dwelling malware, Dan writes, was largely theoretical, but still concerning enough that people decided to modify UEFI, the extendable firmware interface, to use public key crypto, so that it would essentially the machine on booting would say, "Is this boot software signed and unmodified since the signing? Okay, then I'll boot." That's secure boot. Except, did you read this story, Parris? Because it's going to put shivers down your back. On Thursday, researchers from a security firm named Binerly revealed that Secure Boot is completely compromised on more than 200 device models sold by some of the biggest PC manufacturers in the world: Acer, Dell, Gigabyte, Intel, and Supermicro. How could this happen? In the stupidest way possible. The cryptographic key underpinning Secure Boot on those models was compromised in 2022. Someone working for multiple US-based device manufacturers published in a public GitHub repository a platform key. That's the cryptographic key that forms the root of trust between the hardware device and the firmware. It was secured by a 4-character password. So, of course, 4 characters, you can do the math. It's not going to take long for you to brute force that. It was brute forced. The key was disclosed pretty quickly after that accidental publishing, but it went unnoticed until January of last year, when Binerly researchers found it while investigating a supply chain incident. Basically, anybody who used that platform key is compromised. It's an unlimited secure boot bypass for all devices using the platform key. You have to have either privileged access or be on-prem. So it's not probably most people with these machines don't have to worry. I just wouldn't let your evil maid go near your computer. 215 devices used the compromised key, and you can find a table at the end of the article by Dan Gooden of all of the devices, and it's quite a few devices from Acer, AOpen, Dell. A lot of Gigabyte motherboards are widely used. I think we probably have quite a few Gigabyte devices, Look at all those gigabyte motherboards that use the platform key. And then Intel, server boards from Intel, Supermicro. So when you read this, Parris, did you have to go to each machine and see if you had a problem?
No, I mean, it really comes back to, and this goes to our previous conversation, where we have a saying that your weakest link in security is human laziness. Because it just is.
Yeah.
You want convenience. You don't want to use anything that's complicated. You want ease of use. So the fact that you brought up the 4-character password, of course it was a 4-character password, because that was easy to remember. No one will ever try and crack it, but of course they're going to try and crack it. Of course the key was out on GitHub. Of course the key was exposed to everyone. So now you can't trust any device because they're all compromised. It's just... It does not surprise me at all that this happened, and it'll continue to happen, unfortunately.
Well, it did, okay, because AMI then put out a certificate that was clearly labeled. You can see it here in the issuer says, do not trust. The subject says, do not trust. Despite that, an additional 21 platform keys with this certificate, this untrustworthy certificate, were used by other companies like AOpen, for MeLife, Fujitsu, HP, Lenovo, and Supermicro. So, oh well. I turn off, because I install Linux on almost every system, I turn off Secure Boot anyway. Yeah. So what the hell? Russia is now throttling YouTube access because I guess too many people telling the truth on YouTube by 70% at the end of next week. It was one of the last social media sites still available in Russia. It's probably your fault, Parris. I blame you. They're going to slow YouTube download speeds by 40% this week, by 70% by the end of next week. It's interesting. They don't block it. They just make it unbearably slow.
Deterrent.
Yeah, it's a deterrent. YouTube blocks Facebook, X, Instagram. I don't know why they block X. I feel like Russia... I said YouTube. I meant Russia blocks X, Facebook, and Instagram. Yeah. It feels like Russia has so many accounts on X that they probably wouldn't want to block it. But anyway, everything that's happening is a consequence of the anti-Russian policy of the host being YouTube, that consistently deletes channels of our public figures, bloggers, journalists, artists with positions that differ from the Western point of view. I guess you can't blame them, right? Hmm. YouTube did not respond to comment on this story from Bloomberg. You still can access YouTube on mobile devices. Apparently that will not be affected.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because in the Ukraine war, military bloggers are such a big factor in kind of the information war that's happening around that conflict.
Propaganda.
So I kind of wonder if Russia is shooting themselves in the foot by not kind of allowing their friendly mill bloggers to get their version of events out on YouTube. YouTube might not be a particularly friendly place for them, though. I mean, I imagine a lot of stuff gets flagged as misinformation or disinformation.
So they'd like to keep using it. Well, there's our YouTube. There are Russian native versions of a similar product, I guess.
And Telegram is actually huge.
Huge. In fact, this announcement was on Telegram.
Yeah, that tracks.
That tracks. All right, we're going to take a little break. Great panel. Owen Thomas, the new improved 64-pound lighter version. You look so good. Now I hadn't noticed it, but now that you mention it, you look great. Nice job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It's probably been little by little between every.
It has. It's been gradual, but now that you put the two together, wow. First time for Parris Lilly, not the last. Great to have you from Gamertag Radio, and of course Jason Hiner, EIC of ZDNet. Our show today brought to you by NetSuite. It's a simple business fact. The less you spend in your business on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, well, the more margin you have, the more money you get to keep. So it makes sense that in order to reduce costs and headaches, Smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is now the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, all into one platform. And you know what that means? A single source of truth, one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud, no hardware required, which also means it can be accessed anywhere. That's really convenient. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because, well, it's all under one roof, one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into a single platform, slashing manual tasks and the errors that they produce. Over 37,000 companies have already made the move to NetSuite. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. By popular demand, NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for just a few more weeks. So head to netsuite.com/twit, NETSUITE, netsuite.com/twit, netsuite.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. This hits home, Parris, Lilly. Video, you remember the SAG-AFTRA strike, the writers' strike? Well, now video game performers are striking over similar concerns, artificial intelligence taking their jobs. It's another strike. How is this going to impact the video game community?
Could be huge, because if the strike is extended and these voice actors and performers are basically out for a while, then game development could be stalled on some of these big games and probably not even recent games that'll come out this year or in 2025, but even down the road, games that you might not see until 2026 could be affected by this, because you want to get those performances in, and they help dictate obviously where the game is headed in a development standpoint. So this is a big deal, and I'm actually glad that it is happening, because I think these voice actors do need to protect themselves against AI. I'll just add in that a few weeks back, Xbox invited me to sit down and hear their approach on how they're using AI, or how they're attempting to use AI in game development. And there's some things that I'm like, yeah, I can see how this will be helpful, but I can also see the other side where you potentially will be putting people out of jobs. And specifically about this from a voice acting standpoint, I'll just use Troy Baker as an example. He's very well-known voice actor in gaming. He's done things like The Last of Us. Matter of fact, the Indiana Jones game that's about to come out, he's like a dead ringer for Harrison Ford in that game. Under this, he's not protected of if AI could literally replace him, and now one of the most talented voice actors that we have in this industry is no longer needed, because they can just replicate his performance on any game. So I do think they need to strike. I do think, just like Hollywood did, they need to get some policies and basically some regulation in place on how this is going to be used.
At what point in making a game do they bring in the performers to act it out? I know when you're doing like cartoons, you do that almost at the beginning, because the animation has to match the voice. I guess it would be the same for games. I don't know. Yeah,
and again, I'm not an expert as far as that goes, just the limited knowledge that I do have on that. I think it is happening at various stages throughout the process of game development, which these big AAA games now, I mean, you're talking 4 or 5 years, during that cycle. Yeah. So that's why I was saying this strike right now could affect a game that you might not see 2 years from now.
You may remember that this is the second time they've been on strike. They went out at the same time as the writers went out a couple of years ago, but they've been in negotiation now for another 2 years, specifically over artificial intelligence protections. The SAG-AFTRA's negotiators say they have made gains over wages and job safety. So they've made progress, but they are split on how to regulate Gen AI.
Right.
And it makes sense. Do they routinely get performers to record enough material for the AI, or can they just use existing material and go from there?
And that I would imagine that's part of why they're on strike right now. And that's why I brought up Troy Baker as an example, because it has such an extensive library, of work throughout the years. Can they just go back into his back catalog, so to speak, and use AI and teach AI how to replicate all his performances? And I'm like, okay, Troy, we don't need you for the next game in The Last of Us 3, because we already have your performance as Joel, as an example, right? So that would be the concern I think these actors would have, that even previous work they've done could be replicated with AI. And are they being compensated for this, or are they being, replaced altogether?
It's
go ahead.
I do think there's another way to look at this, which is that acting in games has been kind of stuck in the choose your own adventure model. Remember those books where it's like, okay, if you make this choice, turn to page 50. If you make this choice, turn to page 51. And game actors can only record kind of like what's in the script. If you go off script, that's where AI could actually do something creatively interesting. If you could imagine, essentially an AI, presumably based on a human actor, being able to kind of roll with any scenario that evolves organically within the game. But how do you compensate the human actor for kind of the base persona of that in a way that's fair? But let's take as given that there are games that you can't create right now, not because it's too expensive to pay the actor, but it's like you would have to have the actor sitting there for decades recording all the possible permutations of gameplay.
So speaking on what you're saying, that's actually a great example. That's what Xbox was showing me a few weeks back, a scenario. Let's say it's an open world game with NPCs that are populating it. Now their interactions with you are dynamic. So each player is having a unique experience compared to the other one because it's not following a set script. That's great. I think of sports games like NBA or Madden, where you have the announcers. Now they can real time react to what's going on, and they're not just following a script.
Yeah, because they always say the same stupid thing. I want to hear. I want more.
Yeah. And that's where, okay, I can see AI being beneficial in that aspect. Great. As a gamer, I would love to see that. But you also want to protect the people that are making these games and that are providing these performances, that if they're not being used and AI is randomly generating their performance, they're at least being compensated in some way.
Yeah, there should be a framework for that. I agree.
Yeah.
If they're using your voice. Now, did Harrison Ford get money for being...
Well, they're using his likeness, so I would imagine...
I guess he's getting paid for that, right?
Yeah, he's got to get something, but they obviously, Harrison Ford's not going to sit in a VO booth for a game, so you get a voice actor to replicate his performance.
I love the idea of having, how many times have you heard of getting an arrow shot in the knee, right? You want to... Can you give me another reason why you're no longer adventuring? I'd like to make up some new ideas. It isn't, by the way, just voiceover. The agreement covers more than 2,500 voiceover performers, but also on-camera performers, motion capture and stunt performers. There are quite a few of those. The coordinators for those stunts, singers, dancers, puppeteers, and background performers. There are a lot of humans involved in video game rendering these days, and they all want to make sure that they're protected against AI. Members voted overwhelmingly last year to give the leadership authority to strike. Of course, the movie studios made a deal with during the film and television strikes. Last year, I guess, and now they want to be protected as well. We'll see if it holds up some big titles. Seems like it doesn't take much to hold up a big video game title these days. EU threatens to fine Meta because Meta keeps saying Facebook's free. What? The EU says it's notified Meta that its new pay or consent model for Facebook and Instagram. That was the deal where Meta said, look, we make our money by tracking you and showing you ads for things you might be interested in. If you're not willing to be tracked, if the EU forbids that, then we're going to have to charge you. And I think they proposed $15 a month, which no one's going to pay $15 a month for Instagram or Facebook, I don't think. The EU says that Meta has until September 1st to propose changes to its model, which it calls misleading and confusing for users. 12.99 euros a month to use Facebook and Instagram without ads. Is that a fair amount of money? About $15 a month to not have ads? I'd pay, I don't know. I like Instagram, but it's got so many ads. Maybe it would be worth it.
YouTube is the YouTube Premium, I believe, is what, $13.99?
That's expensive, but it's worth it because if you don't pay it, you're gonna you're gonna hate yourself.
Yeah.
You hate your life.
For social media to doom scroll on Facebook, no, I'm not paying that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, for reference, Meta's ARPU, or average revenue per user in the U.S. and Canada, is around $68. So that's how much money they make on ads a year. So
$5 a month, a little more.
Yeah, a little over $5. Yeah. It's lower in the EU. It's around $23.
Huh.
So
they're asking for a real premium.
Yeah, and it's not quite clear why. And I'm sure that would come up in the investigation. Like, what's the justification? If you're only making $2 now, why do you think you should make $15 or $16 a month per user? The
EU says that the company uses confusing language to explain how both the paid and they put this in quotes, free versions of Facebook and Instagram work, and that the rollout pressured people to make a choice without enough time to consider how it would affect them. They also say calling the ad-free versions of Facebook and Instagram free is misleading, since you have to consent to the use of their data for targeted ads. That's an interesting point. Is something free if you have to consent to being tracked?
If you're not paying, you are the product.
Yeah. Honestly, that's how we've always said it, right? It's free. Gmail is free. Instagram is free. Twitter is free. But people understand that it's free, but there's ads, and that's what supports it. I'm not sure are Europeans more confused about that?
It's interesting too, in the streaming world, free is kind of increasingly popular. There are services like Pluto and Tubi that are
supported free TV.
Essentially like the classic broadcasting model. And,
Amazon actually calls it free TV. That's the name of it.
And
Freevee,
Google,
Freevee.
Google TV does too. Yeah.
Maybe it's kind of easier with when you're kind of like being hit with a video stream for an ad to pop up there, you're used to it. But there doesn't seem to be the same controversy over ads in that context. Like, you're watching something and then an ad pops up, versus you are really participating in a social media experience, and ads are being kind of slid into your feed in a not very transparent way. I think there's there definitely are questions about that model, I think, to this day.
So maybe this explains it a little bit. The Commissioner for Justice says people might be confused into thinking if they're paying, they won't see ads. They're still going to see ads, but they won't be tracking you. That makes it completely undesirable. $15 just so they don't track me, but they're still going to show me ads?
Also, who is going to deliver an ad in an untrackable environment?
They're not going to. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me that like an advertiser would agree to that.
Well,
in this
that's one of the reasons we're struggling, because we can't track you in podcasts, and advertisers want to track you. So fortunately, some of our advertisers still don't can live without it. We had an advertiser this week cancel a pretty big contract because we couldn't track people, and they said, "What? Oh, well, we don't want those ads then."
I mean, NBC, ABC, CBS, they're not tracking their broadcast users. Like if you're getting it over rabbit ears, they have no idea.
Right.
They just give you audience data, right? Which you can do too, Leo. I'm sure you're giving them audience data. Here's what we know about our audience.
Yeah.
Here's who you get.
It's not as useful or good as stuff from a Nielsen survey or People Meter, but it's the best we can do. All a podcast knows about you is your IP address, and that is not necessarily of any use. And we don't reveal that to advertisers anyway. So.
I mean, and the IP address could be a service that is downloading the file. Yeah. And,
For you, it's probably the San Francisco Business Times. It's not. Oh, I mean, do you ever download podcasts at work? Every podcast.
Every podcast
downloaded. Yeah, of course, all the time. Every podcast people at Microsoft download comes from the same IP address. It's not much. It doesn't tell us much. In fact, we can't even count them because that counts as one download.
Yeah, and this whole environment sort of took a step backward this week with Google admitting that they're just going to stop deprecating cookies that they've.
Oh yeah, let's take a break and let's get to that story. I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about ChatGPT. They've announced they're going to do a search product. Which is going to be very interesting. This is what Google's been fearing for years. All that and more coming up with our great panel. Parris Lilly is here from Gamertag Radio, Jason Hiner from ZDNet, and Owen Thomas from the San Francisco Business Times. Our show today brought to you by ExpressVPN. This is right down the privacy alley, right? A few decades ago, private citizens used to be largely that, private. What changed? Oh, the internet. Think about everything you've browsed, searched for, watched, tweeted, X'd. Now imagine all that data being crawled, collected, and aggregated by data brokers into a permanent public record, your record. There's a few members of Congress who wish that there were no such thing right about now. Having your private life exposed for others to see was once something only members of Congress and celebrities had to worry about, but in an era where everyone is online, everyone is a public figure. So maybe you ought to do what I do. Keep your data private when you go online. Turn to ExpressVPN. This is the only VPN I use or recommend. In fact, when I travel, it's a great boon because I can still catch the football game and the F1 race. Everyone needs ExpressVPN. One of the easiest ways for data brokers to track you is through your device's unique IP address, which also in most cases reveals information about your location. With ExpressVPN, they're not seeing your IP address. They're seeing the ExpressVPN IP address. It makes it much more difficult for data brokers to monitor, track, and monetize your private online activity. And I love ExpressVPN. It's the only one I use because all of your network traffic, 100% is encrypted. Never leaks any DNS information. That keeps your data safe from hackers when you're on public Wi-Fi. They also invest in their network. It's fast enough to watch HD video, which means you can use it to watch video from any country in the world. They have servers almost everywhere. It's super easy to use. It works on all your devices. They've got apps for the phone, the laptop. They've even got ExpressVPN for many routers. They also sell routers with ExpressVPN built in. You just tap a button, turn it on, you're protected. It's that easy. And ExpressVPN never tracks. In fact, they work extra hard to make sure you're not in any way observed. They run their secure server in RAM. When you spin it up, it spins up into RAM, can't write to the hard drive. As soon as you close that connection, poof, it's gone. And so is every trace of your visit. And this has been verified by third-party surveyors, too, to make sure that, you're really getting what they say. It's amazing. I love ExpressVPN. You will, too. Protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/twit. That's EXPRESS, Express. How do you spell VPN? VPN. expressvpn.com/twit. You get an extra 3 months free when you buy a 1-year package. That's a good deal. expressvpn.com/twit. We thank him so much for supporting This Week in Tech. We also thank our great Club Twit members who make this show and all the shows we do possible now. I have mentioned before, this is we're going to have one more episode of Twit in the studio. We are closing the East Side studio for good in a couple of weeks. That's to save money. But thanks to Club Twit, we are going to continue on. We'll soldier on All our shows ad-free. You get access to the Discord. We will be streaming into every streaming service known to man. We will give you additional content. It is all possible thanks to our wonderful Club TWiT members. $7 a month. You can pay more if you want, but I do ask, if you like the shows and you want to keep the shows going, that you join the club. twit.tv/Club TWiT. Thank you. Thank you to all our Club TWiT members. I said earlier, and I think it's really true, I don't know if we'd be turning out the lights for good in 2 weeks if it weren't for the club. The club's making it possible for us to continue operations and not lose anybody. The only person we're losing is John Slanina, who will be retiring after many years of service. Thank you, John. We're gonna miss. That's gonna be hard. Who's gonna be there to yell at me when I swear? I don't know how I'm gonna. I want a little button, a little Jammer B button that goes, "Hey, knock it off."
Can make an AI out of John and his voice, and then just have it detect
when
you said a bad word.
Yeah, it's on a USB key. Thank you, John.
Nice.
All right, I got John in a box right here. It's in my pocket. That's good. I will assign a Stream Deck button just for you, John. And anytime I swear, I promise I'll hit it. Hey! All right, let's talk about this, Jason. OpenAI announces SearchGPT. It's an AI-powered search engine. Not available yet. It's a prototype and limited release. Only a few, maybe 1,000. I tried, of course, because I pay for ChatGPT, but
premium.
Yeah, premium. But I know it's only, I think, 1,000 people will get it initially. But this is the thing that had Google shaking in its boots a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and ZDNet reported on this, this week too. Of course, AI has become our most popular topic.
Yeah,
cybersecurity was the most popular topic on ZDNet for over 10 years. And January 2023, AI was the number 22 most popular topic in 2022. In January 2023, it leapt to number 1, and we thought, well, this is sort of a fluke because it's going to be just this month or whatever, and it's been number 1 ever since. So we cover it. This one was really interesting because it was anticipated earlier in the spring in the event that they did that OpenAI did, where they released GPT 4.0, and they didn't announce the search engine then, but they have announced it now. It's rolling out to about 10,000 users and publishers for OpenAI to collect feedback. But really, it's taken this idea, and I think the biggest thing to think about with this, at least the people that I know that have used ChatGPT, when they went to use it and to try it, if they didn't go, "Oh, I'm not sure what this is," and then leave, if they kept using it, what most of the people say is, there's a lot of things I used to go to Google, now I just go to ChatGPT, right? They'll go there as sort of first line of defense because there is some more naturalness to it, and it's why, of course, Google is cramming a bunch of its what the SGE sort of its version of these results at the top, these AI produced results at the top of their results, search results on google.com, but they've gotten a lot of pushback from users that don't love it. I think the opposite is going on here. So the great thing about ChatGPT is you can follow up, right? If you ask it, what's the most popular language spoken in Ghana? Then you can do a follow-up question and say, what's the second and third most popular languages spoken in Ghana, right? Or even you can just say, what are the second and most third popular languages? And it knows via context that this is a follow-up search to your first one. And that level of conversationality is just a lot more natural and I think ultimately a lot better. And it's why the rise of conversational AI, has been what it is. And it's why Google is really worried about it. And for the first time, really in 20 years since Google has become the dominant search engine, the landscape is changing. That's my perspective from a user perspective. I'll give you also a perspective from a publisher, which is a little bit more cynical about this, which is that, OpenAI is signing deals with a lot of publishers because some publishers, including us, are blocking them from using.
Interesting.
They just call it the open internet.
Ah, interesting.
We block all of the AI engines that try to scrape our content. And
you use robots.txt to do that? Is that?
We do, yeah. So to keep them from training our models.
Not all scrapers honor that, of course.
That's right. We've seen that with lately. And so there's a little bit of a push and pull there. So I think from a publisher's perspective, I wonder if part of this is their way of saying, that there's going to have this opportunity to use this data on the open web as a way to and let people sort of click through. Although, the rate at which people are going to click through from that versus the way they do on Google, still up for debate. The world is changing on that, and it's going to mean a lot of difference. It's going to mean a lot of change for publishers like us, where Google is a huge source of traffic for what we do. So I am skeptical about this from that standpoint of their motivations here. I think some of it may be antitrust related. Some of it may be also related to because of if AI and chatbots become sort of the force that it looks like they will be, they want to be seen as somebody who is playing fair, not taking people's intellectual property and using it without permission, all of these things. So challenging stuff, but I think ultimately from a user standpoint, it's a good thing because it takes and puts more pressure on Google in ways that nobody has really in the last couple decades.
What about errors? What about, I don't like to use the word hallucinations because it implies it's a human, but what about misattribution, incorrect facts? Right now when you search Google, you can kind of trust those results. Are you worried about fabricated results?
Well, you can kind of trust them, right? But Google is, Google has had problems with its, with its Gen AI experience in search with bogus results popping into that top result, and they had problems before with their summaries. Another way to look at this is that search engines have been training users to search the web for more than 3 decades, and that interface, that way of thinking about asking a question, might ultimately be better than the chat interface for a lot of users. The fact that there's a field called prompt engineering where people are specializing in how to talk to chatbots to get the right results, that suggests that there is a user interface problem with chatbots, and maybe search is just a more familiar, more comfortable interface for a lot of people. It also, to that point about hallucinations, errors, just bad information popping up in results, maybe it's better to get 3, 5, 10 answers, and you can quickly sift through them and say, you know what, I can see what source this answer is from, and this answer is from ZDNet, so I'm going to trust it on cybersecurity. I think people naturally do that in search engines, and maybe OpenAI is realizing, hey, this is not a bad way to hedge our bets in terms of what user interface is going to win out.
Isn't it though? This is part of what Jason's worried about, is that you might go do a chat GPT search and it says, ZDNet says it's safe to use this technology, and you never even go to the ZDNet article. You go, oh yeah, well, it's from ZDNet, it's okay, and you get no benefit from that. They get all the benefit from that. That's got to be one of the things that's concerning you.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Although Google's been doing that, Google started doing that with the knowledge graph. Google realized that what people really want is answers, not links. And so they've increasingly moved towards answers, not links.
So there has been this move, right? The sort of straight set of results that you got for a search has really not been a thing for a while. It's become more and more a winner takes all game. If you got into a code snippet, right, or an answer box, the answer box are like where it will break down questions, right, and you can go into those questions. Or if you got into one of those code snippets, which is like if you featured snippets where, say you have an answer to a question about how to do something, right? How to use a piece of software, how to fix something. If you ended up in one of those, though, you got a lot of traffic out of it. So it's funny because it looks like something that's like, oh, if you end up in there, well, Google just gave you the information from our article. But if you ended up in there, you ended up doing really well. And that the fact is, it used to be that, but it's a winner take all game, right? Because there's only one site that gets in there. Or if you end up in the answers, right, there's maybe a handful. Whereas it used to be, though, if you were on the first page of Google, if you were one of those 10 on the first page, you got a lot of traffic because people would often click multiple ones and see which one. So Google is in one sense more effective for users because that's what Google cares about, right? That's its job. But less friendly for publishers because it's just more and more a winner takes all kind of game.
Interesting. Yeah. Parris, is this the kind of search result you would like? Is a summary of facts, answers, not links?
Maybe I'm just old school in this way. Give me the link. Let me go to the actual source versus you telling me a summary. Like, I'll rephrase it. I like the fact that we're getting a summary of it, but I also want to be able to go directly to that source to basically vet what you're telling me. I would hate that we get to a point where we're no longer actually getting the actual source URL or link to where I can vet the information that's being shown to me, because let's just be honest, we're in an age now where disinformation is rampant and we aren't 100% trusting everything that we're getting, from these AI bots currently, or at least I'm not anyway. So I want to make sure I at least have a way to make sure I'm vetting the information that's being given to me.
Yeah. I mean, that is a big point of it is it's hard to judge the quality of the information, even with footnotes, unless you go to the site. Not that sites don't make mistakes too.
Sure.
I think, I've been using for a long time, on the iPhone, something called Arc. And Arc is a new browser based on Chromium that I've been using on the Mac. But on the iPhone, it's a little different. On the iPhone, it's a search tool. You type in a search, let's say, let's look for Revil ransomware. And then it gives you really two things you can do. You can say go and it'll go to the page, but you see it also has a button called browse for me. And this is, I think, what ChatGPT is working on. You saw briefly some pages pop up, but then it gave me an answer that is not directly linked to pages. It made a page for me of the answer. And it's actually very useful. You get kind of an overview. And then below that, you might get some more. No, let's see. There we go. No, we still haven't gotten to links.
No link to be seen.
You have to go
anywhere.
quite a way to get to links. So you're really getting it's as if you had a smart friend and you said, hey, tell me about the Revil ransomware. And he went on for 4 or 5 pages. And it's been fairly accurate. I have to admit, and I know perfectly well this is a terrible thing for your web pages, but I use it all the time because often that's all I want. I just want the summary of the information. I don't really need to see this.
It's better for the user, right? The trust is the
Exactly.
issue, right?
Yeah.
The trust is the key component, and where we'll see where it all shakes out on that.
But it seems like a lot of users, and I hate to make this a generational thing, but I'm sure they're mostly younger. They seem to believe any video where someone is like pointing up at words like this,
TikTok style. Yes.
Yeah, whereas they'll be skeptical of anything textual, like just default skeptical. And I wonder if we as a society don't just need to do a better job of encouraging media literacy, internet literacy, in schools, in the broader culture, teaching people how to vet information. As Parris said, it's just second nature to him to kind of vet a link and see where it's coming from and investigate. But I don't think that is a widespread behavior, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
Parris, you do a lot of YouTube stuff, right?
Yes.
That's good for you. It seems to me, nobody under 25 watches TV. They watch YouTube, or they watch TikTok, or somebody pointing at text. I just think that's the future, isn't it?
It is the future. It's so funny, just to give insight into my home. I have 3 kids, but my wife, it was like I had to pry DirecTV from her cold, dead hands. Where I'm like, nobody is watching this except you. It's
wow.
Can you just get YouTube TV and be done with it, because no one was watching. So we actually finally made the switch earlier this year, and it was so funny. She was so against it. And now she can't live without it.
Isn't that interesting?
She's just used to it.
How old
now,
are the kids?
I have older kids. So my daughter's 22, my son is 18, and then my youngest daughter's 14.
Now, I bet the 14-year-old never turns the TV on at all.
Never. Yeah. My son only does it because he watches sports with me.
Sports.
But other than that, like you said, they're on regular YouTube, or they're on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever they're doing these days.
Yeah. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the reasons Apple and Amazon and all the other streamers are looking so hard at live sports. It's the only thing that gets young people to turn on a television set.
Yeah. I watch mostly YouTube. I would say 80% of what I
you're
watch
a
is
young person in an old person's body. That's all there is to it. You always had a young persona. You don't watch for the Olympics. It's so funny. I heard my wife cheering this morning, and I came downstairs, and I thought she must be watching the Olympics. There's nothing else to cheer right now. She was, but she was watching it on her phone. We have a TV just a few feet away. She was looking at clips on her phone, and that's all she cared about. She didn't want to watch the whole race, just who won.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
And it's a huge thing for NBC Universal too, to get people to watch the Olympics on Peacock right now. They think that this is kind of make or break to get that streaming service to critical mass.
All right. Well, I want to talk some more about this. I want to talk more about AI, but we are running out of time. I am so glad to have, it is 4:20, so don't go anywhere. I am so glad to have Jason Hiner, Parris, Lilly, and he already left. No, he's back. Owen Thomas, he's pointing up at the words at the top of the screen. A great panel today. Perfect for the subject matter. Our show today brought to you by Panoptica. Panoptica is Cisco Cloud's application security solution, and it provides end-to-end lifecycle protection for cloud-native application environments. You need this. It empowers organizations to safeguard their APIs, their serverless functions, their containers, their Kubernetes environments. Panoptica ensures comprehensive cloud security, compliance, and monitoring at scale, offering deep visibility and contextual risk assessments and actionable remediation insights for all your cloud assets. Powered by graph-based technology, Panoptica's attack path engine prioritizes and offers dynamic remediation for vulnerable attack vectors, helping security teams quickly identify and remediate potential risks across cloud infrastructures. A unified cloud-native security platform is so important. It minimizes gaps from multiple solutions. It provides centralized management and reduces non-critical vulnerabilities from fragmented systems. That's Panoptica. Panoptica utilizes advanced attack path analysis, root cause analysis, and dynamic remediation techniques to reveal potential risks from an attacker's viewpoint. This approach identifies new and known risks, emphasizing critical attack paths and their potential impact, so you can do something about it before it happens. Panoptica provides several key benefits for businesses at any stage of cloud maturity, including advanced CNAPP, multi-cloud compliance, end-to-end visualization, the ability to prioritize with precision and context, dynamic remediation, and increased efficiency with reduced overheads. You want this thing. Visit panoptica.app to learn more. Panoptica, panoptica.app. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. Thank you, Cisco. They've been a big supporter of late. You saw that, speaking of AI, Jason, Reddit is now, they made a deal with Google, I think $60 million to access all their Reddit stuff, which, by the way, of late, when I talk to people, that's the you do site reddit.com before any Google search, you're going to get real results from real people, but they are not letting anybody else scrape them. Now, Reddit says this has nothing to do with the $60 million that Google paid us. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Google has put its thumb on the scale for Reddit. Certainly users are doing it for sure. But, one of the things we've seen in product searches is just in 2024, all of a sudden Reddit, things that you're searching for, if you're looking for a review of something or the best phone under $500 or things like that, Reddit has ended up filling up a ton of those results, much more than ever before, which is almost has sort of over indexed a lot of these things to sort of the confusion and almost the inconvenience of users, to the point that Google appears to be dialing that back a bit.
Oh, interesting.
But there is no doubt that users want to see not just what publishers like us have to say about something. They want to see what people in the real world have to say about it too, right? They want both those perspectives. And people don't fully trust Amazon reviews. They know there's a lot of spam and a lot of fake reviews in there. And so Reddit is a good alternative. And then I think you see, I think Reddit, I really do give Reddit some reason to be salty about the way things have gone the last couple of years, because some of the rumors are that OpenAI built a ton of their algorithm, right, on Reddit data. And now it's gotten this huge evaluation. At the same time, Reddit is also trying to go public, and they have a much, much, much smaller valuation, even though they think that their data is worth so much more than what it's being valued for. They're like, look, our data is what powered, what the hottest thing out there right now. And they've gotten no credit and no, also financial benefit from it. So they certainly deserve to be a little bit salty about the way things have gone. And I know I'm sure they're trying to navigate what that looks like for them for the future.
I remember, I wish I could give them credit. Somebody said, I'm at the store, I'm looking at the maple syrup aisle, and there's all these maple syrups, and I'm trying to figure out which one's the best maple syrup for my pancakes. If I do a Google search, it's just going to give me a list. If I do a Reddit search, I find r/maple syrup, and I find people who are serious maple syrup aficionados listing the best maple syrups and why, and I go right to the one I want. And that's why Reddit is better because of humans. For some searches, Reddit really is better. That makes sense to me.
This is the thing that people thought. Remember, when social was really getting big, and people would, when Twitter was still like a fun place, and you would go doing just this instead of saying going to Google.
Oh, you'd ask
you would
Reddit.
Just go to Twitter.
Yeah. Lazy Reddit.
You would ask
lazy.
You would ask Twitter.
Rather lazy Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, you would just say on Twitter, hey, what's the best maple syrup to buy if I'm making pancakes? And you would get like 10, 20, 30 answers, from your friend network.
Do people still do that, or is that capability lost?
I don't think so. There's just too much noise on there. Also, remember, there wasn't a whole lot of activity on the social networks, to be fair, back then, right? Like now, I mean, and algorithms dominate it. If you put that on some of these ones that are dominated by algorithms, that's just never going to end up in many people's feeds. And so it's sort of worthless, and so people don't do it. But boy, there was a lot of that, and Google was really freaked out. That was the whole reason Google created Google Plus, right?
That's right.
Because they were afraid that they were going to miss out on this, and they had this whole narrative, and there was the whole narrative about them talking about this painting in the Googleplex with the boat and the ship and the sea, and there's like, this is us, and we have to go into social or the ship is going to sink.
This is how you know your company is not doing well, when every time somebody comes up with something, you have a panic and you all start running around like crazy. They did it then, and I remember everybody had said, your bonus depends on how well we do in social. Now they're doing it with OpenAI and AI search. That's a bad sign for a company. You're always reacting instead of...
It's not great.
Yeah, doing something.
It's not great. They did it badly with social, and it didn't go well.
No.
I think... they're also doing it pretty badly in AI. It's not going great either. I think they will eventually do better, in AI. They did originally invent the transformer model, right? That was technology that came out of Google.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. A lot of the best AI stuff came out of Google.
Yeah. So I think that they have what they call in the industry like a right to win. They have a right to win a little bit more in AI than they ever did in search, for sure, because they have people that have been thinking about these problems for a long time. I think that they held back on some of the language model stuff, even though I think they knew that there was a lot of potential and that it was going to happen quickly, because I think they worried about some of the what this technology could do in the wrong hands, and I think they also worried about it, about it siphoning money off of their main business, which is search. People search ads, right? People putting ads around search. They're a public company that has to make more money every quarter to satisfy their shareholders, and they worried they didn't see a real end game for them there. So I think they will eventually do well. They're still stumbling and they are behind, but I do think they in generative search they will do much better than they ever did in social.
We shall watch with interest. Go ahead.
I would love an AI bot that takes a YouTube video and converts it basically into the format of a Reddit post. Like and clearly a lot of people are getting answers to their questions on YouTube, but I don't want to watch a video.
It's a lot to watch.
I want to to learn something.
And YouTubers have a little bit of a habit of drawing out the beginning, mentioning the subscribe and the bell and the thing, and 15 minutes in, then there's finally the thing that you watch.
Parris knows this pain. The look on his
is
face.
laughing.
He knows the game.
Yeah.
Got to hit those 10 minutes.
It's like when you search for a recipe, there's like a
2,000
word 2,000 word narrative intro, which is largely because the copyright rules around recipes are you can't copyright the recipe itself, like the raw list of ingredients, or even the steps, but you can copyright like the creative expression around the recipe.
So I've seen this a lot. It's been more and more the case. Why is it that they're doing this? It's literally 4 pages down before you get the recipe, the reason you went to that site. They do it so they can own it?
Yeah, I mean, they can't own the recipe proper.
The treatment
basically.
They can own, yeah.
The treatment they can own. And also, those 2,000 words, if it's interrupted every 500 words
with
by
an
ad.
I always forget that thing. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Actually,
cashing 5 checks all the way down, on that.
That's a good point. It happens to me every time. I fall for it. Speaking of X, Elon Musk is in a little bit of trouble because X has apparently changed their rules to say that you are automatically opted in to your tweets, your data being used to train Grok, its LLM. According to a spot by Easy Baked Oven. Twitter this is Kimmy Bestie of Bunzi, CEO of Execube Tech. I don't know. She's Easy Bake Oven on Twitter. Twitter just activated a setting by default for everyone that gives them the right to use your data to train Grok. They didn't announce it. You can disable it, not in the mobile app, but only in the web app. But you've got to find it. And there's the setting. This is just the trend, isn't it? Is there anything wrong with doing that?
Personally, yes.
Why?
I don't like it.
Okay.
I would prefer that you give me you officially communicate that you're doing this so that I have the option. Even if you're going to force me to opt in by default, at least let me know so I can then decide, hey, all right, I want to keep it in, or I can go in and disable it. Because I saw that same tweet and I immediately went and I disabled it.
Did you?
I didn't want to participate. Yeah, I don't want to participate in that. I think anything, and again, obviously AI has been a hot topic for this entire episode. I think everything AI related, the consumer should be aware of what they're contributing to it. And if they want to be a part of it, make it an option, allow us to have a choice versus doing it this way. We know that, wild guess, 75% of the people on Twitter aren't going to bother to opt out of this. And they're basically allowing their information being used to train this AI bot.
Defaults matter, right?
Yeah.
Like when you default stuff, still so many people never change the defaults. I think it's generally 80% or higher on most things. People never change the defaults. Most users will never change.
Well, and that's
defaults.
why X did it that way, right?
Yep, for sure.
They know that.
And
This is a company, I think Elon Musk is in denial about it, but it's still under FTC scrutiny over its data practices. It doesn't seem like a good move, but Elon
Musk don't care. Elon is the honey badger of social media owners or whatever. I don't know. Of billionaires.
For sure.
If we are talking about this data collection piece and AI, and since it's now rumored that iOS 18.1, the beta is coming out with Apple Intelligence and it is imminent for the next,
Oh, really? I thought they weren't going to have it in
potentially.
time for the fall release. Oh.
That was a Gurman. That was a new Gurman drop.
Wow.
So since we're talking about that, there is one thing that this also relates to, because even Apple, who has made its whole reputation over the past, 5 to 10 years, they're essentially like, we're not very good at data. So instead we're going to look at privacy. We're going to lean into privacy. Right. And they have done, and it's been very effective, and it's been very good for users, and it's good for the industry, honestly, right? To have at least one player that is defaulting on the side of privacy. And then you have what Apple's done in Apple Intelligence, and especially image playgrounds, which is, to me, a bit shocking and has been undercovered. And I'm sure you've probably covered it, Leo, and on MacBreak Weekly. But I think that what they've done with image playgrounds, where they went and they trained their model on the open web, right? And this is sort of, as soon as people say we've trained it on the open web, then like they've gone and they've taken stuff that they do not have permission to use, and they've used it in their model, and it's potentially taking money out of the pockets of creators and artists and all that. And it shocked me that Apple did it. But it is one of the things that I really do not feel good about, and I'm surprised and disappointed, and it deserves a lot more scrutiny, because you know that the Apple ecosystem very largely has been built, and during their worst times on creators, right, have been steadfast in supporting their platform and using their platform. And for them to do this in a way that really undermines so many creators is unfortunate and disappointing, and is another sort of version of this, right, where it's like, let's just go out and scrape everybody's stuff. And now they say, oh, you can opt out of it, but they've already grabbed your data and trained it with it, right? And so there's some real there's some real answering that I think Apple and the industry is ultimately going to have to do, on this.
Someone's not minding the brand store over at Apple Park, because they also put out that horrible ad for I think it was for the iPad called Crush.
Yeah, they actually showed it at the release. Yeah.
Every form of human creativity into a little thin iPad.
Right.
But it's like, why didn't they show all of this creativity blossoming out of the iPad supporting it, instead of we are squeezing creativity out of the universe and turning it into silicon?
I think maybe they are up against the same wall that everybody else is, which is that AI, if it's not trained on the broadest possible variety of content, isn't very good. And isn't that what they got with Siri?
Maybe. But there's also, if you look at like what Adobe has done with Firefly, for example, they've only trained things on licensed sources, right? Apple could have done something similar to that. Why wouldn't they do that? That would have then even publications like us, right, can trust something like that. We could use stuff on that. We can't go and use Apple Intelligence to create anything that we're going to use, in a story or anything, because we don't know the legal viability of those things that they've scraped off the open web and who they're going to get sued by that eventually could sue us, right? If we used their image creation tool to create an image that then we used in a story. So it's radioactive. Like, we could never use that. And from an ethical standpoint, wouldn't want to use that because it could be trained on something by someone who didn't give permission, to use their stuff as a source. So you can do this stuff on licensed sources. And Apple did mention in the keynote at WWDC that they mentioned licensed sources and that kind of thing. I think, to your point, Leo, I'm ultimately saying I think you're right, Leo. I think they decided we have to use the open web if our model is going to ultimately be as good and as flexible and as usable as everybody else's. But I still think it's a swing and a miss for going out and using the open web to train all of this stuff, and it puts them and the rest of the all of this stuff for image stuff in some really murky legal territory, and it's going to make it even more challenging, I think, over the next couple of years to sort out.
Well, and if you're right, if it's possible to do it without, infringing copyright, then they ought to. But there's so much pressure on all these companies to keep up at this point. They're all running around like chickens with their heads cut off. They just, and that's why so much stuff is breaking. And move fast and break things is the motto.
They're afraid to miss the wave.
They don't want to miss the wave.
There's a lot of buzz about the wave. And the reality is that, we are probably getting a little over our skis like we do in the tech industry every time something new comes out, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. We'll get to the trough of disillusionment, before too long, and then it'll sort itself out. And like over time, a lot of real stuff and interesting stuff will get really good over a longer period,
I hope you're right. And I think that's actually a very accurate analysis. Let's take a little break. One last break before we wrap things up. What a fabulous panel to have all three of you on the show today. Has been a blessing for me, and I thank you, Parris, Lilly, and Owen Thomas, and wonderful Jason Hiner. Our show today brought to you by 1Password. Now, we've talked before about 1Password's latest acquisition, the folks from Collide. And now they've merged the two to make a tool that every enterprise needs. Because I'll ask you a question. Do your end users always use only company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? No, of course not. How do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on a bunch of unmanaged apps and devices? Well, that's what 1Password's bringing to the table with their new Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management is the first security solution that brings all these unmanaged devices, apps, and identities under your control. Starts with 1Password, which ensures every user credential is strong and protected, and then adds the power of Collide we've talked about for a long time, which 1Password recently acquired, so that every device on your network is known and healthy, and every app is visible. 1Password's extended access management solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Imagine your company's security is like the quad of a college campus. You know, you got your nice brick paths between buildings. Those are the company-owned devices, the IT-approved apps, the managed employee identities. But then, as on all quads, there are paths people actually use, the shortcuts through the grass that are actually the straightest line from point A to B. That's human. Those dirt paths, they are the unmanaged devices, the shadow IT apps, the non-employee identities on your network, like contractors. They're there legitimately, but how do you know? Most security tools are designed to work on little happy brick paths, but most security problems, you know where they go, they take place in the shortcuts. You need 1Password extended access management for the way we really work today. If you're using Okta, you can use it right now, coming later this year to Google Workspace and Microsoft Entra. This is such a cool solution, and I love it because it puts users first. They become part of your security team. Check it out at 1password.com/twit. That's the number 1, PASSWORD.com/twit. Make sure you get that /twit in there so they know you heard it about it on This Week in Tech. 1password.com/twit. Actually, this whole thing makes me think of Amazon and their Echo. Whilst we knew that they were losing money on the Echo, now we know they're losing a lot of money on the Echo. According to the Wall Street Journal, between 2017 and 2021, in a 4-year period, Amazon lost more than $25 billion. We don't know what
that's
they've
Meta
lost since
VR
then.
money. That's like Meta level VR sort of money there.
That's Echoes, Kindles, Fire TV sticks, video doorbells. They bought Ring in that time period. They're trying to reverse the loss, and one of the ways they're trying to do that is we've heard that they're going to have a paid version of Amazon Echo that has AI in it, $5 a month. You ready to pay $5 a month for your Amazon Echo, Parris? Oh, you're muted. Is it us or him?
Oops.
There we go.
No, that was my dog barking. I muted earlier. No, I was saying Echo isn't allowed in my house now.
Oh,
so
interesting.
I'm definitely not spending $5.
Why not, Parris?
Well, ask my wife that question.
She wants the dish, and she wants no Echoes.
And honestly, I understand and respect her reasonings for it, because here's a device that potentially could be listening to all our conversations, and she just doesn't feel comfortable having it. And I'm not necessarily pushing hard against that either. I'm like, okay, fine, we won't have Echo in the house. So that's the main reason. But to your point about the question of spending $5 a month, even if we did have Echo, no, I don't think I would want to pay anything.
If it's not worth it for free, it's certainly not worth it for $5 a month. According to the Wall Street Journal, Amazon's device operation was a pet project of Jeff Bezos, former CEO and founder, of course. And the Echo Assistant was inspired by his interest in Star Trek. He wanted the computer in Star Trek. They quote one former longtime devices executive, when launching products back then, we didn't have to have a profit timeline for them. We had to get the system in people's homes, and we'd win. We'd innovate, then figure out how to make money later. Former Amazon Devices Senior Vice President Dave Limp told the Journal in 2019, we don't have to make money when we sell you the device. We make money when people actually use the device. Problem is, people use the device for cooking timers and to find out what the weather was, and they never use the device to buy stuff on Amazon. And that turned out to be a $25 billion loss. Well, we'll see.
And I think that's the big thing, Leo. What you're saying, even though we don't use Echo, obviously I have Siri, on my Apple products.
Well, you have something listening then, yeah.
Yeah, but my wife does it. She turns it off on her phone.
Oh, really? Boy, she is
Yeah,
adamant.
Yeah, she is very adamant about her privacy, and look,
Good for
look who
her.
her husband is. I'm in cybersecurity, so it makes sense.
Yep.
But to that point, even with Siri, the only things I'm using for, hey Siri, what time is it? Hey Siri, what's the score of the Lakers game? Hey Siri, is it going to be hot tomorrow? That's really all I'm ever using it for. So I don't see in any time soon a reason why I would want a paid tier of that, because I'm not using it at an advanced level anyways.
Right. You don't need to pay $5 for the time or the score. How about you, Owen? Are you an Echo user, or you don't have them in your house either?
I actually do have an Echo in my garage gym. This is going with my earlier theme. So when I'm swinging a kettlebell, I can blast RuPaul music at the highest possible volume.
I love it.
But I don't know that was really a considered decision, other than I had an Echo lying around. I think Amazon was even offering them free with purchase at one point. Just to give you an idea.
They really wanted to get them in the house.
How they were losing money on these things.
Yep.
My brother uses an Android, so like Alexa calling is sometimes something we use as kind of like an iOS. What do you do when you're on an iPhone and your brother's on an Android? Like, how do you call each other? It's a very first world problem. I don't know. I don't feel. I guess I don't feel very strongly about, like, is Amazon violating my privacy worse than any other company out there? But I also don't love the product enough to put it in my home proper. It stays in the garage.
Yeah. And you like it because while you're working out, you can listen to music. That makes sense.
Yeah, it just seemed like that's
the only way to use it.
Easiest way to accomplish that, rather than just doing it through my phone.
I think we can wrap things up. I know Jason wants to go out and get his vegan cheese, so we'll let you have your vegan cheese. Jason Hiner is editor-in-chief of ZDNet, our good friend. When was your first time on Twitter? It's been a long time.
2008, maybe.
Wow, that's very early on. Yeah. Really great. Really great to have you on. Old friend.
Always a pleasure.
And we will have you on. The next time you'll be on, I'll be in my attic, but it will
love it.
It will still be.
I'm in my basement.
Yeah,
so
why not? Right. Let me see. I can go to your appearances and find your first appearance.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
We have it on.
Oh, that's an old picture
on the website. Many appearances.
So cool
4 pages of appearances. Let's see. Your first one.
Wow.
Was going. Come on.
The funny thing, I remember my first one because you all had invited me, and I was visiting my grandmother in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I was like, so I took my laptop and got in one spot and had my microphone.
Aww.
So yeah,
it was This Week in Tech number 205 in 2009. You were on with John C. Dvorak and Pete Cashmore, who was the founder of Mashable.
From Mashable.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
That is when we were only audio, so we can't go back and look at how fat you were back then. No, you weren't. You've always looked the same. You've never changed. It's amazing. Thank you, Jason. It's really a pleasure.
What a pleasure.
Thank you for being on the show.
Always a joy.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to Owen Thomas, who's also a longtime regular on our show. We just love having you on. And your new good-looking, slim... Show us the guns again. One more time. Let's go to the gun show. Good Lord. Are you just lifting all the time? What are you doing?
I'm not going to lie. I am.
I love it. You're ripped, my friend. You look great.
It's what works. Also,
awesome.
Like, apparently this week in tech is the weight loss secret. Like, go on TWiT and lose weight.
There you go. It's
like there's a causal connection.
Yeah. I wish it would work for me.
Because correlation is causality.
Owen is, of course, the managing editor at the San Francisco Business Times. If you are in San Francisco, you should subscribe, right? Is there a subscription? Or just go to the website. How should
go to bizjournals.com/San Francisco and smash that subscribe button.
It's just that easy. And is there a cost to doing that?
Yes, there are various offers. I should know the latest rate.
That's okay. People will find that out.
But yes, sorry, I should have that at the tip of my tongue.
And we showed that was your first appearance on the show, as far as I know, back in.
Yes, at least in modern time.
Yeah, in modern times. I think you'd been on before then, but that was the last time in modern times with video that we had you on. Thank you, Owen.
Yes,
great to have you. And Parris, your first time, was it okay? Did it live up to your expectations?
It absolutely lived up to my expectations, and thank you so much for having me on. I mean, like I said, I'm just a big giant nerd, so you've been a part of my life for a long time. You
can make me cry.
And
what part of the country do you live in?
Southern California. I live in Temecula, California. So just north of San Diego.
So next time you're up in the Bay Area, come visit me in the attic. How about that?
Oh, I would love that. And I'm up that way a lot when I go to the studio for Kind of Funny. So yeah, would love to do that.
Yeah, I have 2 seats. I can't have a whole lot of people up there, but I have room for one more person. Thank you, Parris. It's been great having you, and we'll have you back very soon. Parris Lilly.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks to all of you for joining us. Now, a reminder, next week, if you have a Vision Pro, we are going to do a Vision Pro version of this, thanks to Alex Lindsay and Stream Voodoo. So I don't know what that means. It won't be. Will it be live or after? It has to be after. It'll be live. You can watch us live. Okay. And it will be an all live in studio audience. It is, in fact, as I think, the schedule is a little fluid, but I think it will be the last show we do from the East Side studio, the last TWiT show we do. After that, it'll be up in my attic. And it kind of, I think, a new model for what we want to do, something a little bit more fluid, incorporating more content from you, the community. Stay tuned, because thanks to the club, we are able to do this little bit of a pivot here. Should be a lot of fun. We thank you all for being here. We do TWiT Sunday afternoons. Actually, that's another thing I want to talk about, maybe moving the time a little bit earlier in the day, Benito. We should talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now we do it from 2 to 5 Sunday afternoon Pacific, 5 to 8 Eastern, 2100 UTC. But I'm thinking maybe move it to noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. That way I think we can get more people who are on the East Coast in the show, and they won't miss dinner, which has been a problem. So just we'll negotiate that and let you know. If you have a strong opinion about that, let us know what time you'd like TWiT to be. I think most people listen after the fact, and that's really the beauty of it. You can we record it so that you can watch or listen at your leisure, either from the website, twit.tv, or on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to This Week in Tech, or subscribe in your favorite podcast player, audio or video. You can get the show after we finish it on Sunday, just in time for your Monday morning commute. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate your support. Join us next week for the last TWiT from the East Side studio. And as I have said now for 19 years, thanks to our wonderful panel, and thanks to all of you, another TWiT is in the can.
This is amazing.
Doing the TWiT.